GG33 podcast. Today we have a guest who is a Muslim scholar, is a man who is a big time Tate supporter, and is a man who believes in a lot of stuff, same stuff I do. Sheikh Suleiman, how are we doing today?
I'm doing good, Gary. How's things? How you doing?
I didn't butcher your name, did I?
No, you did a really good job, to be honest. But you don't need to call me Sheikh Suleiman. Just call me Suleiman. It's all good.
Okay, Suleiman, whatever you like, my friend. So I like to talk about a few things today: numerology, astrology, Islam, Tates. But the first thing I want to talk about is you. Could you tell my audience exactly who you are, and just go from there?
Sure. So basically, my background is from academia. Um, I'm doing a PhD in philosophy. I've been a teacher, math teacher for a significant period of time. I then went into journalism. I start looking at a number of cases. I end up looking into the Tate case, and obviously, I know we're going to talk about that quite a bit. And then it's only at that time I looked at it neutrally, and then later, after looking at the evidence, looking at the data, and looking at Tate as well, because I didn't know much about him before. Yeah, you're right. I do appreciate the value he brings to society.
Okay. First thing I want to talk about with you is Islam. We're just going to get right off the bat. Is numerology haram?
So I do not think numerology is haram whatsoever. And actually, I'm not sure in terms of like the numerology that you practice. And don't get me wrong, I do see your Twitter page, so I'm not pretending I'm ignorant of what you post. But at the same time, we do have numerology within Islam as well. Uh, it is something which is considered more of a lost science because what happened was over time, because of politics, it got relegated into the fringes of society, and even some people start arguing it's haram. Those people who are vocal, end up believing that numerology was haram. But numerology, books of numerology, books of astrology, a lot of these lost sciences are like 1,200 years old within the Islamic sphere. And I could tell you a bit about our perspective of numerology if you want to get into it.
Yeah, we'll definitely get there. When I look at Islam and its benefits, what has done throughout history for mathematics, you have to basically say that numerology has a place within every culture, within every single holy book. I mean, let's face it, guys. If numerology is haram, that means the numbers in the Bible, the Quran, and the Torah are haram. How can something be haram when you have numbers all over the holy book? It's a matter of fact, if people want to get really down to it, English is not God's language. Farsi is not God's language. Mandarin is not God's language. God's only language is numerology. And as a mathematician, is that something you agree with?
I mean, in terms of God's language, I know what you're trying to say. You don't mean from a anthropomorphic perspective, but you mean that it's something which demonstrates or is found in the entire fragments of society. And as you said, I completely agree with you. Numerology or numerical miracles, one may call it, but they call it miracles, but it's numerology is found in the Quran. You look at, for example, the number of times that the sun is mentioned, 365. The number of times the moon is mentioned, 28. So, and these are just some examples. I never looked into it as much for this.
Yeah, the moon
podcast.
goes around once every 28 days. It also that's also the woman's menstrual cycle, once every 28 days. So that is in the Quran, correct?
Exactly. So it's 1,400 years ago. Like, who was calculating? Let me work out how many times I'm going to say the word sun throughout the entire Quran, which is quite large. But then it's exactly 365. So these are examples of how numerology, and there's much more detailed aspects of this. The number of times day and night is mentioned is exactly the same, and so on and so forth. These numerical miracles are 100% found in Quran, and it's completely a ridiculous argument. Like you said, numerology is in the entire fragment of society. It's the whole entire code of life is built on it, and the entire code of society is built on it. And we'll talk about that in a bit more detail. But 100%, anyone who makes that argument is just basically a lack of understanding of either what numerology is or a lack of understanding what Islam is. And so it's just ignorance as opposed to basically thinking something is haram.
Have you always been a Muslim?
Yes, I was born Muslim.
What country are you in right now?
I'm in the United Kingdom.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Well, we are I mean, I don't know, bro. I don't know. We are when it comes to certain freedoms, we spoke out about.
You live in the police state, bro. They got cameras all over the place.
No, that's true. That's true. But then on the other hand, like we were the most, not in terms of other countries, but within Western society, we were the most who fought against lockdowns and these type of things. So
Well,
we
I
were.
would disagree. In America, you had the states of Texas and Florida, which pushed back a lot further than the UK did. I'm going to tell you
No,
that
no.
right now.
So in the UK, the people fought against lockdown significantly. We stopped wearing masks, especially up the north. Down the south a bit more later, but even then, we had stopped wearing masks well before anybody else had done.
Well, now that we're on the subject, my man, are you vaccinated?
No, I'm not.
I see. Why is it that you had enough faith in God to look after you while other people of the Islamic faith decided, they're not going to trust in God to protect them. They're not going to trust in a God to protect their families. They preach all this about submit to God, but at the end of the day, they submitted to Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson and Johnson. Correct me if I'm wrong, but are these people frauds?
I don't think so, and I'll explain why. Because if you take that doesn't mean that you don't have a trust in God, because obviously within society you need to take certain things that God has created. So He's created, like for example, medicine.
It ain't
Now,
crazy, brother.
no, I know that, but I'm talking about medicine in itself. So medicine in itself there is certain benefits to it, and so God's created in the universe certain things that He says that you should take and do yourself. For example, some people are like, "Oh, you don't need to work hard," but you do need to work hard because in life, God has created certain parameters for you to put the effort in to make sure you succeed. What the or for example, promotion or support of the Russia war or support of many of these other draconian measures shows a lack of intelligence, shows that people are basically sheeps and they follow their leaders without using their intellect. And again, our holy book, the Quran, talks about this, that those who basically follow those who are in power without using their own brains, they are basically misguided people.
So basically, the people who took the are sheep, correct?
100%.
Okay. Doesn't Allah tell you to think?
100%. So when it comes to using your intelligence, using your intellect, using your rational thought, again, that is found throughout the whole of the Quran.
I see. Let's be honest now. If if they fell for the biggest psyop in world history, does that not take a knock on their credibility, no matter how smart, no matter what they accomplished in life? Does that not take a hit at their credibility? Because when it came down to it, when it came down to push and shove, they folded like a tent.
It does impact the credibility to a certain extent. The aim is then that you basically learn from it and make sure that you don't make the same type of errors or mistakes again, or you realize that you got done over. But 100%, that is one aspect of the Russia war. Is another aspect. There's many other aspects.
We'll get to that in a second. We'll get to. I know you want to get to that. We'll get to that. Here's my bottom line, man. People need to be held accountable for their actions. I know that's foreign to many women out there, but when it comes to men, they need to be held accountable for what they did. And if they fell for a psyop, that's a hit on their credibility, not just today, not in 5 years, but until the end of their days, because they got hit. Having said that, let's move on. At the very start of the war, Nazis were basically being funded by the CIA. Nazis were being funded by the Europeans, and the Zionists said, "Oh, they're not harming us, so we don't care." I as a Jewish person, found that offensive as hell. That, wait a second, these are the same Nazis that you said were bloodthirsty murderers 80 years ago. What has changed today that now we are actually funding these people? I mean, I remember in the history books, people telling me how they were Nazi hunters. Now we have the UK government, my government under Biden, a usurper, a whole bunch of other Western governments supporting. And in my opinion, it's not even a freaking country. If you look at the history, it didn't even exist until 1991. So the fact of the matter is, it was taken away from Russia. And I'm going to make one more point. If the Chinese put their troops in Toronto, if the Chinese put their troops in Mexico, you better believe the United States would do something about it. The same way Putin had no choice but to enter and try to create a buffer zone. Do you agree with what I just said, sir?
I agree with entirely with what you said. So I guess we're going to agree with a lot until we get to the taste stuff. But but so I completely agree with you, and not just that. And even up until like 5 years ago, we had basically documentaries documenting the Azov Brigade being neo-Nazi and the fact that a level of impact they had, and now that's completely being whitewashed in the media to now present them as freedom fighters. So yeah, there's many such examples of that. And as you said, I completely agree with that. Putin had no choice when you basically have NATO, who's basically funding, supplying, and had overthrown the previous regime. They had no choice in that regard. So yeah, I completely agree with you.
I want to make this clear. I'm not a Putin bootlicker. My wife is from Russia. My dad immigrated from the Soviet Union. But I want to make this clear. Putin runs Russia like a mob boss. Okay, this is not a good person. He's done a lot of good things for Mother Russia, no doubt. But when it comes down, he definitely loves Russia a lot more than Biden loves America or whoever your prime minister loves the UK. But at the end of the day, let's not pretend this is a good guy. But, in the way I look at things, I always look at the lesser evil. And the lesser evil to me is Vladimir Putin. Because we need a strong Russia. I'm going to tell you why. The day is going to come when the Chinese need more energy. The day is going to come when the Chinese need more fresh water. The day is going to come when they need some new ports. And I'm gonna tell you, I'm not too worried about Taiwan. Sometimes I understand they might attack Taiwan in 2025 and stuff like that, but let's not forget they could just take Manchuria from the Russians. If Russia is weakened to the point where it collapses again, it's not going to collapse into 7 different countries this time. It's going to collapse into 20 different countries, and that's just going to make China stronger because it's going to take all that land to the north of its territory. It's going to get its access to oil. It's going to get its access to fresh water. It's going to get its access to women. And by the way, when I mean women, I mean women. Russian men are dying at an alarming rate right now. Someone's going to have to impregnate those women, and it's going to be the Chinese to the south of the border. That's exactly what's going to happen. So what you're going to have in about 20, 15 years is you're going to have the Chinese start looking at the Russians. Because if Russia becomes weak, that's what's going to happen. And by the way, I want people to understand this. Vladimir Putin thinks the same thing I do. Because Vladimir Putin put something in that when he goes, the next president's going to have weakened powers. When Vladimir Putin goes, the next Duma will have much more strength. And that means he believes the next president of Russia could be weak. And that's why he strengthened Duma. And I'm telling you, Vladimir Putin thinks the Chinese are a future enemy. It will be in the U.S. best interest to knock off this nonsense and start planning for the real enemy, which is the CCP, sir.
Again, agree with you because when you look at the CCP, they are extremely powerful. Decades ago, what they did was they put their agents into the Western society. They infiltrated. There's a number of research and academia demonstrating that. They not only did that in recent society, they financially taken control of much of Western society, and not in addition to that, you saw them as applications like TikTok is an example, but there's many such applications like that where there's
Chinese spy app.
there's high amount of surveillance going on, and so yeah, China does see the United States as a threat. They have and the UK as well, and they've basically been putting things and measures into place to basically take control. And the thing about China is what makes them quite smart. They've taken all the power. They've taken over Africa. They've taken over all these countries without even lifting a weapon. Whereas with the West, what we've done is spend significant amounts of money on wars where there's not been no benefit other than maybe benefit to other foreign nations, and it's been highly problematic.
When Brexit happened, do you think that helped the UK or weakened it since it's been a couple years now?
It's weakened it significantly. So at that time, that was another great example of what we were talking about. This was the media impacting people, controlling people to think in a certain way, and then make sure that they voted against and voted for leaving Europe. And just think about that. Even poor people who were impacted the most voted against their own self-interest just because the media told them to. And that is the biggest biggest example of the strength and power these people have and the weakness that other people have in terms of using their own intelligence and their own intellectual thought in order to decipher situations. And now what's happened is we struggle financially in the UK. We struggle both because of Brexit, but also because of the Russia war and the lockdown. All of these things have left people in the people don't have the financial means to extremely struggle, and Brexit is a factor of that.
Um, what is your opinion of the United States of America being, or what is the opinion of people in the UK of the United States of America? Do you consider us your big brother? Do you consider us a child who's out of control? What is the opinion of the average person in UK of the United States of America?
Right. Okay. So in terms of Britain as itself, yeah, they consider United States as an important ally. In terms of me, I think the United States is very important. What world do I want to see? I want to see a world where the United States is in charge. Obviously, if there's anybody in charge, because a world where, for example, China is in charge is a scary world. World where any of these other nations are in charge, it's a very draconian world. It's actually United States which has freedoms. Now, obviously, what's happened to Western society as a whole, both the United States and the United Kingdom, is a huge problem, which I think we're going to get into later, in terms of some of the values that now is being perpetuated by the liberal left. Now it's becoming a huge problem where they're self-imploding. But if that hadn't happened, definitely we want a society where the West is in charge.
Since 1944, Bretton Woods, 1945, when the Nazis surrendered and Japanese surrendered, we've had the most prosperous, successful period in human history ever. And that has happened with the United States of America in charge. So there is a lot of validity to what you said. Just like when the Ottoman Empire was in charge, it made for 600-700 years, it made sure the world ran the way it was. I mean, people had to pay their jizya, but I consider the Ottoman Empire the closest thing to United States of America in modern history, not the UK. Many people consider it's the UK. I personally believe it's the Ottoman Empire because it was very multicultural.
Oh, 100%.
People in the Ottoman it's very interesting how open the Islamic overlords were within the Ottoman Empire back then. But it seems like that type of thinking, that type of secular thinking, isn't spread as much right now. What is your thinking on that?
So 2 points. First thing, any empire, so you give the Ottoman Empire as a prime example, we can add the Roman Empire in there. Any empire that is multicultural is extremely successful. An empire that is ethnocentric is never successful.
Why?
Both it Well, there's a number of reasons for it. First of all, because when you don't have diverse ideas and opinions and innovation coming from a huge avenues into your society, you're not going to be successful. In addition to that, let's be clear, data clearly shows hybrids always do better. What I mean by hybrids is, for example, two races getting together, having children, and then having a hybrid child, essentially, they are always a lot more smarter. They are always a lot more fitter. They are a lot more intelligent, generally speaking, compared to a populace that is ethnocentric. So an ethnocentric society is never as successful as a multipolar society. And the Roman Empire, what you mentioned, and the Ottoman Empire are prime examples of that. And now you're seeing that any country that basically doesn't have that innovation in terms of that aspect and are very ethnocentric, this society collapses.
I'd like to challenge you a little bit on that. I believe if you look at Rome, I believe if you look at other countries, that the very, very foundation of it was pretty, it wasn't diverse at all. As it expanded the Rome, as it expanded different empires, because they had to grow, then they started bringing in the immigrants. But at the very beginning, they seemed to be very racist in nature. At the very beginning of Roman Empire, the very beginning of what the hell are we gonna say?
In the inception, yeah,
Yeah, the inception. Even the Ottomans at the inception were a little bit more strict.
for sure.
Why do you think that is usually what happens? Because I will say that America took the greatest minds from the whole world in 1950s and 60s, and it was
Exactly.
unmatched, and that just doesn't happen anymore.
Exactly, and that's a prime example. That's the reason America became the best. And in terms of the examples you gave, So when you're insulated within your own area, then obviously those you're not able to progress. But once progression happens, as you said, once you start taking over the world, once you start controlling it, then you need those diverse ideas, you need those diverse opinions, you need those diverse psychologies, and then that's how you're able to expand and be better. And then, as you saw, Roman Empire was able to expand for that reason. The Ottoman Empire was able to expand. Now, in terms of why, because I never answered your other aspect of your question, why is it that things are different now? The difference is what we were talking about earlier. Why is it people think numerology is haram? Why is it they think astrology is haram? Why do they think that a lot of these lost sciences, and there's many more within Islam, physiognomy and so on and so forth, that people think that they are haram? It's because in the early part of Islam, it was a very rational based religion, and what happened was when you looked at the sects of Islam who represented Islam, such as the Ottoman Empire, it was very rational based thinking of religion because Islam or the Quran is a very rational a book. But then what happened in recent times is with the House of Saud taking over, some of the deals they had with some of the Salafists and so on and so forth, that idea became prevalent. And now even though they're still numerically the minority, but they're the vocal minority. They have a lot more power in terms of finances. They have a lot more. If you look at social media, if you look at any of the landscapes media, they are highly represented. And so, therefore, when you're perpetuating a certain idea all the time, then they all think it. So that's why you speak to a Muslim, generally speaking, you'll have someone on there and they'll say numerology is haram. But for example, now, when I'm sure we're going to do a segment on numerology where you're going to tell me a bit about your Western numerology,
Of course.
I'll tell you a bit about ours, and I'll do a bit on you, and you could do a bit on me, and
Sounds
it'll
good,
show
brother.
people it'll show people that this is not alien to Islam.
Um, want to switch gears a little bit. I'd like to talk about why you were so supportive of the Tates. And before I say that, I got an axe to grind with those guys. They got me suspended in 2019. So I got an axe to grind with those guys. So let's make that clear. Second, I think you have to be a moron to not understand that the Tates are being set up by the government. So let this be clear. Just because I don't like the man personally doesn't mean I'm going to lie up here and say he belongs in jail. But, my friend, there is a difference between law and karmic law. And when I look at the Tates, I look at people that have a lot of charisma, no doubt. I look at people who had the war room backing them and they made them stars. But when I look at how he became famous, it wasn't because of any intellectual accolades. It wasn't because of any physical accolades. I mean, he was a world champion, but that's not what made him famous. The thing that made the Tates famous is the same thing that men have been doing for thousands of years, which is basically pimping women. So my question to you is, having said all that, okay, they might do some good things, but why is it you're so supportive of people who actually pimp women and you go all out your way to support it? Because I got to tell you, brother, I know people in the war room. I got friends in the war room. You're more supportive than they are in a lot of cases. So again, I'm not sure if you're on the payroll, and you can answer that if you like. I'm not sure if you're basically a mouthpiece for the war room, and if they send you notes and they tell you what we need to think of. But this is questions that I wanted to ask you.
Course.
You said nothing's off the table, so let me hear it, brother.
Off the table. Course. And if I don't answer something, it's not me dodging. Just remind me in case.
Of course.
Yeah. So in terms of the war room, I'm not in the war room.
Okay.
And nor do I speak to them. Actually, I even said to them that you guys flopped. Like, what is going on? When Tate was basically taken out in January, there wasn't hardly any support on him. Everyone was full on attacking him, and they didn't have anyone backing him up. Now, in terms of myself, I came into this completely neutral. All I saw on social media is, because the rule is, and you're an intelligent guy, I think you probably do the same thing. Whenever everybody's making a point, they're probably wrong. And probably the truth is the opposite.
Okay.
So I saw everybody hammering this guy really badly. And I was like, wait a sec, what's going on? This guy's getting hammered. Let me look into it. So I started looking into it. And my first thing was, I looked at some of the threads and I just started smashing them. I was like, logically, these don't make sense because of so and so. So. And then what happens is you start looking into it and you start investing it. Then I started researching the case. And I found that basically, and you agree earlier on, it just did not stand up. It was completely false and fake. So I completely destroyed.
Okay, but let me ask you something. If a man starts, using other people's platforms, IG, TikTok, and he basically has 50,000 people at its peak posting 7 videos a day. I mean, you don't expect the social media companies to get a little angry about that? I mean, he was the first one who did it. And as you know, in society, when someone finds a loophole, when someone finds a way to, break something, to, basically get around something, they start making new laws. So no one's ever going to be able to pull off what they pulled off before. No, even them. So, don't you agree that maybe they should have planned this a little bit better? Maybe they should have, try to cut some deals because, the quicker you go up, the faster you fall down.
Okay, so your argument is that essentially in 2022 they blew up and they used a certain mechanism, as you said, social media. They
Correct.
used a number of people to post a number of videos, and they did it to such a high proportion. He ended up hitting the algorithm. It became famous. That's fine. I mean, I give him credit for that. Just like now, I'm seeing you doing really well. You're hitting all the podcast streams. You're hitting all the big streamers. That's strategy. That's smartness. That's logic. I mean, I've seen Zerka do the same thing.
And we don't have 50,000 people posting 7 videos a day. It's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
little. See, Zerka is organic. He didn't have a war room pushing him. I'm a little bit different. I created a group called GG33. They help push me. I'm the leader of the group, but it's kind of hand in hand. Gary Numbers Guy, GG33. Zerka kind of did it himself. Tate had the war room, so it's not completely organic. This guy blew up, but he had a lot of people pushing him to a level that's never happened before. And these media companies got pissed off. These social media companies got pissed off. They started complaining to the U.S. government, and now he's paying for it. At least that's my opinion.
So I don't agree with that. So I agree with the first part of it. 100%. That's how you blow up, isn't it? It's in terms of the context you have, how they basically push you, how you do really well, how it's how the videos are cut up, and then you basically have a large proportion, or you proliferate the internet, and you're going to do really well. That's a very good strategy to do. In terms of what you said of the
he was spamming, sir. He wasn't posting videos. He was spamming. 350,000 videos a day is spamming. You have a big Twitter feed, my friend. I'm sure you had those people who, when you post, you have a whole bunch of spam underneath. That's basically what they were doing. They were spamming his videos over and over, and actions have consequences. The social media companies got pissed off, and they took him out.
No. So I'm saying I agree with the first bit that he's basically spammed the internet with a lot of content, and then people watch his content and you start getting more content. But in terms of why they took him out, that is not the reason why they took him out. And I'll be very clear on why I believe that they took him out. It's because we live in a society now where it's a liberal leftist society. If he had spammed the internet with content that they like, they would never have been bothered whatsoever. But what this is content that is affecting the minds and hearts of the youth. And what the Hollywood industry, the music industry, social media, the media, what they want to do is control your children and control my children through sex, through teaching sex education in schools, and they want to basically hedonize their minds. And so what he did was, because he basically told men to think, he impacted the youth, and that is the very much demographic that they care about more than anyone else. That's the real reason that they decided to take him out, and that's the real reason they're trying to take him out right now.
Let's be honest. He didn't create Red Pill. As a matter of fact, he's distancing himself from that right now. You're saying a evolution in Tate, where he's so-called a family man now, where he was pimping hoes a few years ago. My question to you is, Andrew Tate, first he was an atheist, then he was a Christian, then he was a pimp, then he was a Muslim. At some point, don't you think this is disingenuous and he's basically going wherever he thinks the money's at?
So no, I don't. I think what it is we're and I do like message him and so on and so forth. Like, what it is you've seen that there's a complete progress in terms of what he did. So 100%, what he did in terms of pimping is completely hedonistic, immoral, and I completely disagree with it, both from a from a natural morality perspective and also from a religious perspective. Now, going back to the point, he was an atheist. He did do pimping. He became a Christian, and he most likely continued to do it. I don't know exactly what the timeline is. What I do know is when he decided to convert to Islam, he no longer did any of this hedonistic behavior, and
How do you know
if
that? How do
so,
you?
I know
No, no,
that.
no. I'm like you
Yeah,
just said. You don't know him personally. You don't talk to him. You send a couple messages to him back and forth. How do you
yeah.
know he's not actually doing it? I mean, he could say he's doesn't drink anymore, haram. But how do you know
Yeah.
what he's doing behind closed doors? You don't actually know because you're not there, sir. With all due respect,
Okay, so you can only go on what someone tells you. So, for example,
he's
when and
lied
it's not just
before many times about many
uh,
things.
yeah, so you can only go on not just what he said, but also the people around him. So the
Mm-hmm.
people around him told me as well. But like you said, there is a possibility because remember, we're not based in everything on logical certainty. So there is a possibility that everything could be a psyop on a scam. And just like, for example, now you could be faking it. Like you could be not a numerologist, you could be blagging it, but just based on the
20
way you're
years,
presenting
brother. That'd
yourself.
be a good con, man.
No,
20
no, I know,
years.
no, no. It could be logically,
Exactly. I understand what you're saying.
but from a rational
Mm-hmm.
perspective, it's possible, right? So, but I don't think so because when I look at your information, just the bits and bobs I've seen, it seems legit. And I saw you smash that Muslim guy as well, which was a bit of an annihilation.
He was a
So,
fraud.
yeah, yeah. So you annihilated him, right? So my point is even though you could be a con artist, one can only base it on what I'm seeing from my own eyesight and from my conversation, from the video I saw of you, from your posts, and it looks like you're legitimate. Now, could logically be possible? Yeah, it is. But with Tate, I don't believe it's possible. When I'm looking at some of the things that he's writing, which has been a complete progress, as you said, it's not within the red pill, it's not within the conservative movement, it's not within the Islamic movement, because a lot of Muslims get angry with him in terms of some of his content because they want him to be a lot more, like I said, we talked about it, they want him to be a lot more Salafist, a lot more hardline, and he's not being that as well. Actually, if he was cared about being fake, that would be the best line to go down because all the money is in there, all the vocal support is in that idea. So that would actually make more sense. But the fact that he's keeping some kind of balanced ground, a ground that I respect and is more close to what I believe, I'm giving him a lot of respect. It shows that at the moment he's willing to take the hate and the heat from all these people
Mm-hmm.
to tell you what they believe,
Okay.
to
Um,
state what he believes.
is homosexuality haram?
Yes, homosexuality
Mm-hmm.
in Islam is haram
Mm-hmm.
and it's a sin. But when it comes to homosexuality, both it's haram and it's a sin. But within the monotheistic religions, in Islam, we have so it is punishable, it is a sin, but we have the
Stoning?
most light we have the lightest punishment, and stoning isn't one of the punishments.
Is that only for whores?
No, so I don't believe there's stoning in Islam. I think that was something that was fabricated later.
Oh, okay. Um, hmm. Okay. Let's go to Tristan. Do you believe that Tristan is a good person? Because even when Andrew so-called converted, I don't know how much money he made off that, but even after Andrew Tate converted, Tristan kept drinking. Tristan kept pimping. Do you have the same opinion of Tristan Tate as you do Andrew Tate?
So in terms of Tristan Tate, I don't know him that well. Like we've never. I think there's been hardly, almost zero communication between myself and Tristan. I do know that he does a lot of charity work. That I know for a fact.
Does
But in
that make
terms
up
of
for manipulating women?
so again, this is the thing you see. So when you look at the case against both of these guys,
Hmm.
the claim is, and why I'm saying the case is because they're saying that they've never done it. And when you look at the data, I'm talking about in terms of what's in the file, it says all the way up to April 2022. So before Andrew became a Muslim and 6 months before they became arrested. Now, in terms of Tristan himself, he's a Christian. If he follows Christian ideas, that's good. There may be certain things that he says that maybe I don't agree with, but that's just Tristan himself. But I'll be honest with you, I don't look too much into Tristan, other than I know that he does the charity work.
I
But you can
gotcha.
ask me any specific direct. If you want to give me one of his opinions, I can tell you if I disagree or agree with
No,
it.
no, no. I got you. I got you. He's basically the second wheel. I get it. I just keep wondering how you seem like a very intelligent man. You definitely can articulate your thoughts very well. But Andrew Tate's a known manipulator. He has manipulated people for a living most of his life. And to think that this man just converted to Islam out of his good heart, I basically believe he was backed in the corner. I think the West was coming after him because of what he was saying, and he couldn't go to any European country. He probably didn't want to go to Russia. I can tell you right now, Steven Seagal told him he was welcome in Russia, and he didn't take the offer. And don't ask me how I know, but I do know. He basically fucked up. And, I don't understand how people can actually believe a man who's been manipulating and lying things all his life. But, I understand that sometimes people want to believe. So I believe when he converted to Islam, your bond with him became stronger because you're Muslim brothers now, and you want to help him and you want to believe him. And I think a majority of the Islamic world sees him the same way. They're like, okay, we got a big influencer on our side. Let's support him. Let's believe he's real. I think he's basically taking everyone for a ride the same way he's been taking the women for a ride his whole life. I think this is just all calculated. And before you go into all his charity work and all this charity work he's done, let's not forget that the Tates in the war room are not stupid. No one's going to accuse these people of being stupid. They've done stupid things, but no one's going to accuse them of being stupid. Al Capone was a big-time criminal, and he opened soup kitchens, and he gave to the poor all the time. So this is a tactic that people at the top start using to win the hearts and the minds of the poor people, the plebs out there. So just because someone does charity doesn't mean anything. Let's not forget the Red Cross is basically Rothschild, okay? So first of all, the Rothschilds supply the bombs to basically kill everybody. Then they come in with the Red Cross to help. This is a cause and effect type of deal. So that is my opinion. I think he's trying to take everyone for a ride. And again, I don't think he's guilty of anything the government says. To think that Andrew Tate needs to rape women when he has basically 1 million women hitting up on Instagram is complete fallacy. But he's getting hit for a reason. And for me, I believe it's karma. You might be able to get around the law, but brother, no one's above karma.
So, first things first, we both agree that this case is a joke.
100%.
So in terms of what you just said now, in terms of him being fake, I think I've made my argument that what it is if he is, and again, we don't know, we can't see.
But he has a history of lying. He has a history of manipulation. He has a history of basically going after people. And you know what? I go after people too. So I get it. But when it comes down to it, I'm not sure a person with such a checkered history should be just given open arms and let in Islam without people questioning, yo, is he only here for money?
So the first thing is going after somebody does not mean you're a bad person. As you said, you do it.
I do it
Someone
too.
comes after me. So I do it as well. Someone comes after me, I go full on, like complete mode to basically go after them. So
100%.
And it's weak to basically take punches and not punch back, right?
But he goes after people without being hit first. He's the aggressor in a lot of those situations. So it's a little like for me. I gave the guy a numerology reading in 2018. There's evidence of this that I posted with a DM from Tristan Tate. Okay. So I gave the man a reading. I told him that he'd get world famous in 2022 because he's born in 1986, the Tiger Year, 2022 is the Tiger Year. That's exactly what happened. And what did he do? He called me a fraud. He went out the way to say numerology, astrology is a scam when his own people in the war room come and use it. And I want to say this. I've made the number 28 famous because it's number of wealth. Elon Musk born on the 28th, Bill Gates born on the 28th. Ask me why the war room pays people on the 28th. And then it says, oh, it's a lucky number. These people are disingenuous. And to give them your full trust and support, I believe is a mistake.
Okay, so coming back onto the point what I was saying, the day that Andrew Tate does something which is, let's say, abhorrent, completely wrong, I will be the first person to call him out. In terms of if he does something which goes against the very ideals that I believe in, I will be the first person to call him out. Up to now, since I've looked into the case, and it has nothing to do with him being a Muslim. If he wasn't a Muslim, I still would have went through the same path where I investigated what was happening and what wasn't. But I acknowledge from you that there will be people, for sure, without a doubt, within the Muslim community, a large number, who basically support him just because he's Muslim. Yes. Now, in terms of Tate himself, I've just explained why I believe that he's genuine. Now, he could be fake, for sure. For him, the smartest move would have been not to basically espouse the views within Islam that he's doing, where he's keeping a balanced approach. All the money that you're talking about, that's all with basically a specific ideology within Islam, a specific sect. And when he comes out with certain comments online, for example, he made a comment on his video recently a few times. He said it, and then in the video with Candace Owen, he doubled down on it. He said there's a few paths to God. They lost their minds. That was from a PR perspective. If you want the Muslims to love you, if you want the money from them, you do not say that. But he said it, and he doubled down on it, which then demonstrates to me that this guy was willing to risk the Muslim community for what he believes in. In addition to that, for example, you saw the famous picture of when he walked into the court with the Quran. That was the biggest risk you could ever do in an extremely orthodox country.
In Romania, yes.
In Romania, nonetheless, and we know the history about Vlad the Impaler and so on and so forth. And yet he was like, I don't care. I'm going to take the risk. If it was me, I would have been a lot more strategic. I would have not done that. I would have been like, let these guys give me the innocent verdict, and then I'll be like, guess what? I'm a Muslim. So when you look at a lot of these things, they do indicate that he is genuine. Like you said, we can't look at his heart or mind.
Okay. I'm glad you said that. You said you would have done things a little bit more strategically. Now let's talk about this man's leadership ability. He was safe in Dubai. He was absolutely safe in Dubai. Me and him have many mutual friends. They told him, do not leave Dubai. He left Dubai. He got arrested. My question to you is, all these people who look up to this man as some kind of genius, as some kind of great motivator, a guy who keeps telling people he's great at chess. Obviously, he's not too good at strategizing life. He should have stayed in Dubai. He would have been safe. None of this stuff would have happened. The fact that he went to Dubai not only cost him, not only cost his brother, not only cost his war room, it shows that the man is impulsive and doesn't think before he does things. Also, if this man was a true leader, he would have had a protege ready. He would have had someone ready that, you know what, they take me out, I got someone. Just like, Elijah Muhammad had Malcolm X and Louis Farrakhan, he had people ready if something happened. They come back with Justin Waller. This guy's a clown. He has no charisma. They come back with people who can't take that mantle and keep going. So basically, I question the guy's leadership. I question the guy's integrity. And honestly, I question if he actually knows what the fuck he's doing. He had the world by the balls. And he did the dumbest thing possible. He goes back to Romania. And then he antagonizes the Rothschild's granddaughter. Come on, man. You want to send a pizza box, which basically is 33 in Masonic code, and you want to send that to the daughter, Thunberg, Gretchen, whatever the bitch's name is, Mrs. Climate Control herself? That's the Rothschilds. He threatened a Rothschild in Romania. If he doesn't do that, he's probably free right now. Is this a very intelligent man?
So, look, there's 2 points. There's a few points there. First, in terms of integrity, we talked about it. Now, in terms of you're talking about there's 2 things you said about leadership, having a successor, and the second thing was going to Dubai. Going to Romania from Dubai. Let's talk about the going to Romania from Dubai. So going from Romania to Dubai, I agree with you. That was an error. And that making an error does not mean that you're a terrible reader. It's actually, you need to make sure you don't make those errors, but sometimes people do make those errors. And the reason for him making the error, in my view, is because it's innate. What happens is, and you believe in numerology, so you'll agree with me on this. What happens is sometimes, remember, he's born in 1st of December. In our numerology, that is somebody who has a lot of leadership skills.
Agreed.
Has the ability to basically be in charge. But
Agreed.
Sometimes, and if you look at all his data, so you look at for example, his numerology, you look at his astrology, you look at his numbers, so 1, 12, and so on and so forth. Look at everything together. This is somebody who has the leadership skills, has the ability to control people, even has arrogance, which you need to a certain extent. But what happens is because they're high, because it's like fire, it's like a fiery person. Just think of it as like a fire. So fire, what happens? It blows, it torches, it takes out, right? But then at the same time, sometimes a fire is so powerful and so strong, they don't sometimes look at what's beneath them, and they can make an oversight. You can oversee, thinking that you're above everybody else, and you stop looking at the more minutia things. So I think that was an error on his part. But I mean, let's see.
Alexander the Great, 10 years, he ran through everybody, poisoned by a woman. Napoleon ran through Europe until he was stopped at Waterloo. Exactly. These people were doing it for decades. Andrew Tate fucked up within a year. This is not a leader. This is not a, maybe he's not, he is a leader. He's just not a good one. Because a good leader would have not put himself in this position. The war room and everything he was building was put at jeopardy because of his stupidity. And from what I hear, this is just a rumor. I can't say this is 100%. I heard he came back for his brother because his brother was still a OnlyFans pimp. And he had to go back and check on his business in Romania. And that's why they got knocked. You know, in America, Joe Biden was never on Air Force One until he was the president of the United States. Obviously, he's a usurper, but he was never on Air Force One while Obama was president. And that's because you never put the number one and number two in one place at one time. Can you imagine if one of them got locked up, it would just prop up the other guy that much more.
So just want to come back to you on the point you made. So the difference between Napoleon, and you gave a very astute example of that, but then again, it kind of links with my analogy that literally this guy was taking over and he never looked at the minor aspects of it.
But there's a difference between Napoleon. Hold on, there's a difference between Napoleon, who did it for 15 years. There's a difference between Alexander, who did it for 10 years. This guy couldn't even do it for one.
No, let me explain that. So the difference is, with Napoleon, you're right. He did it over 10 years, he did it 15 years. But remember, he was prepped for it. He was ready for it. He built up towards it. It wasn't that he became like randomly like big time Napoleon in a day or two.
He married Josephine. He married Josephine, and it went from there.
Yeah, and he built up to it. But the difference with the Tates is they blew up so fast, as you said, because there was a specific strategy in place. He blew up even bigger, and then even to the point where he became even more mainstream. So it makes sense that he didn't have the parameters in place, the different things in place to ensure that didn't happen. Now that he's realized that, if he continues to make that mistake, then I agree with you. That is, again, that's not great leadership. But as long as he's put things in place and he's building towards that, basically his problem was he built up too quickly. He blew up way too quickly.
And whose fault is that? I mean, whose fault is that? I mean, listen, the pendulum swings. That you're a smart man. People who are listening understand the pendulum swings. If you push too hard one way, it's going to swing back just as hard. That's his fault. He shouldn't have built himself up that quickly. Instead of 350,000 videos a day, it should have been 20. If he did that, he'd still be around and he'd still be gradually building. But because he blew up so quickly, they took him out.
No, but if he did 20,000 videos a day, let's say as an example of your example, he might not have been the Andrew Tate that is the Andrew Tate. This big,
but he would have. He wouldn't have been. He wouldn't have been what he became that quickly. But over time, he might have been even bigger.
You don't know that, because what happens is
it's possible.
As you, not everything's possible, but as you know, the way this world works now, the way the social media landscape works, the way the internet works. A lot of times your blow up happens nowadays if you do it in a very fast time. Like if you do it slow over time, yes, it can happen to some, maybe it will, but big blow ups happen under a short period of time. I can give my own example. Like I'm nowhere near this level, but on Twitter, I only blew up in the last like so many months. Again, blow ups happen and you become well known. And you don't expect it, but then you need to put parameters in place. So I agree with you in the sense of he should now be putting things in place to ensure that, for example, he's built a good foundation. He's built, like you said, like a backup situation and so on and so forth. But him blowing up, that was a smart strategy. You can't be like, oh, let me blow up slowly and maybe in 15 years time, I'll become famous when I'm a grandpa or whatever it may be. I mean, this guy's 30, like, was he 36? Like time would have run out by then as well.
Well, I mean, I'm blowing up at 45. So let's not say that you couldn't do it.
But your niche, your not niche isn't the right word. Your moat is different to his. Your one is numerology, astrology, reading people. You could be 80 and still people will be like, wow, that's sick. Like, tell me your numbers and so on and so forth. But when you're
I hope
with
someone
him,
replaces me by then.
yeah, and I'm sure you built it up. But
Of course.
With Tate, the difference is what his moat is. It wouldn't work if he's an old geezer.
Well, let's be honest. It wasn't Tate that created Red Pill. It was Rollo Tomasi. With all due respect, he was the one who basically started this thing. He just didn't have enough charisma to do what Tate did with it. Tate didn't invent any of this. He just took it from the best guys and made it better. He just has that much charisma that he didn't invent any of this stuff. He just said what other people said in a more charismatic way.
Yeah, and that's the point. So he said it in a more charismatic way. He was able to penetrate the specific demographic that's been able to make him famous. And so you agree with me. If he was an old geezer like Rollo Tomasi or whatever, it wouldn't have happened. So the point is, it's specifically this time, this situation, this circumstance. And as you said, the year of the tiger, all of those things came together to basically make him blow up in such a fast way.
No. Let me stop you right there. I told him, and War Room members, 2022 was this year. They wanted to push him in 2021. They delayed everything because of numerology and astrology, and they did it in 2022 based off the year of the tiger. This is 100%. So I have a part in building that guy up. Yeah, unfortunately,
and I'm not disagreeing with you because I don't know anything about what that happened there, but I'll take your word for it, right? And my point is, that was the specific time and situation in terms of within let's 2021, 2022, but that period was the important time for him to blow up. He had to blow up because, and also again, you believe in numerology, you believe in astrology, you believe in all these things.
But the elite do things on But the elite do things on purpose based off dates. World War I ended on 11/11 at exactly 11 o'clock because the elite wanted it that way. So yes, numerology and astrology work, but the elite are actually using this stuff on certain dates, and you look at the history and see it.
No, but what I mean is, if you look at Tate's character as well, when you look at the type of person he is, when you look at his numerical date of birth, I'm not talking about the year of tiger, I'm talking about the numbers.
He's a 1.
The fact that he's a 1, the fact that he's a fire, and so on and so forth. All these things, he's a fire. Fire blows.
No doubt.
And so a dust person can basically take time to build up, but someone like Tate couldn't.
We'll disagree on that. I will make the distinction that if he built himself over maybe 2.5 years instead of 6 months, I think he would have reached even bigger fame, and he probably wouldn't have got canceled the way he did. But that's just my personal opinion. We'll move on. Do you think it's ironic that me and you are talking about numerology and Andrew Tate, yet Andrew Tate goes out of his way to say numerology is bullshit and he's had many videos threatening me, saying numerology is BS. Do you find that kind of ironic, my friend?
So again, and doesn't that show that basically I'm not somebody who basically blindly follows
100%?
Yeah, because I've got my own positions on every single thing, and you can ask me on anything, and I can give you an answer. And so even if Tate does not believe in numerology, or as you said, he believes in numerology, but he's not admitting it, whatever of those two,
isn't that haram? Using something and then lying about it?
I mean, if it did happen, then he should acknowledge you for sure, because I think it's immoral to basically not admit that something someone said, you basically took it into consideration. And again, that's between you and him. I really don't know what happened in terms of
that. Of course.
In terms of myself, yeah, I do believe that numerology is real, and we'll get into it a bit. I'll give you a bit of reading myself from our side, and you can whatever you want to do from your side, and we'll check it out. But yeah, I mean, all of these numerology, as you said, and I think it shows that basically I'm not blindly following Tate. There'll be if Tate says some things that I disagree with, I may not call him out, or I may do, depending on how big it is. But there will be, if there is certain situations, I will. But right now, a lot of the ideas that he's professing, a lot of the ideas he's stating since he became Muslim and since he left prison from Romania, I agree with them. And so
I think you would have to be a feminist liberal to disagree with most of his positions. I don't disagree with his positions. 70-80% of his positions I actually agree with. At least the Andrew Tate who was around maybe 3-4 months ago. I'm not sure what the hell he's spewing right now, but the one who was around 3-4 months ago, I agreed with that. My last question to you before we move on from Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate said he would be okay if his son was gay. Is that a position that bothers you as a Muslim, knowing homosexuality is haram?
So I mean, I'll have to check if he said that out
No,
of context or
I
what.
can assure you he said that 100%. So let's assume he did say that. Is that something that would bother you that Andrew Tate said if he had a child that was a homosexual, that his exact words, he would be okay if his child was gay as long as it wasn't a degenerate? My question is, if you live a degenerate lifestyle, which is what it is, how can you be anything but a degenerate? So having said that, what is your opinion on that, sir?
Right. Okay. So in terms of as I agree with what you said. I disagree with it, and I do think that it leads to a huge amount of degeneracy. Now, in terms of homosexuality itself, I personally am more inclined to the position that it is something based on nurture as opposed to nature. Although there is a
So it's
position,
environment.
yeah, environment, yeah,
So
for sure.
basically, the liberals are indoctrinating these kids in schools and colleges, correct?
Correct, 100%. Like there is a specific targeted attack by the schools, by the universities, by Hollywood, by the music industry to target your children and target my children. And the significant increase isn't based on some randomness. It's because they've been targeted without a doubt. Obviously, I think the bigger problem is feminism, actually, but that's a
Well,
separate point.
I think
Because I think
homosexuality comes from feminism because first you need the feminism to lead to homosexuality. It's all step by step by step. The last one being pedophiles. That's what they actually want to do. First, they'll take the legal age down to 18 to 16. Then in about 5 years, it'll be 14. Then they'll try to take it down even more. It's all gradual with these people. It's like when they always say you put the toad in the water, and if it's real hot, it will jump out. But if you gradually increase the heat, it will boil itself to death. This is basically
so.
what they're doing.
So I agree with you to an extent, but actually, I think feminism is actually the over. So it's not one thing that leads to the other, although that is an aspect of it. But feminism is the overarching thing on this,
Yes.
and the proof of that is whenever a woman goes even against LGBTQ, feminists win. So J.K. Rowling fights with
Yes.
transgender, so biological men. J.K. Rowling wins because they have all the power. So the power is in that. And why is feminism more important? Because you lead to a population collapse, you lead to the destruction of the family, you lead to the destruction of the gender roles. When you destroy all of that, it comes to the collapse of societies. And the reason they do it is because of consumerism as well. There's a multitude of reasons. Coming back to the point. So yeah, if it was my child, I would say the answer to that is there would never be a situation where my child would ever even say that he's gay because it's based on nature.
Is it safe to
Nurture,
say?
sorry,
Is it safe
nurture.
to say that if you have a father, if you are a father and your son or daughter ends up being a homosexual, you have failed as a parent?
Completely agree.
We're on the same page. Um, Moving on. When it comes down to the big picture, let's talk a little bit about numerology and astrology now. I believe that the people in positions of power are using the occult against people. I believe they do attacks like 9/11 on the 11th on certain dates. I believe they even founded Al Qaeda on the 11th to make sure everything would fall into place. When I look at the homosexual agenda, I can even do numerology on this one. Watch this. Massachusetts was the first state in America that basically allowed homosexual marriage. Massachusetts area code is 617. If you take the word FAG and you break it down numerology, 617 is what it is. So it basically shows you how numerology even hit the area code. Even with the area code, this stuff works. My question to you is, how have you, as a Muslim man, been so into numerology and astrology? It seems like kind of an oxymoron.
It's not an oxymoron. This is the thing. It's because you're talking to the wrong Muslims, like I said. But in terms of in
I don't mean
terms,
to cut you off, but in all due respect, the rich Muslims, the ones that hire me to plan their third, fourth weddings in Saudi Arabia, they're all on it. It's usually the poor people who believe
yeah,
this is haram, just like Christians who think this is satanic. It's usually the poor people who think that. The people up there in society, they're the ones who are calling me and they're talking to you. So that's why we might have a different perspective. But yes, I don't mean to say Muslims, but I will say this: the poor Muslims seem to think this is haram.
Yeah, the poor and the ignorant. So 100%. I mean, they do, but like I said, when it comes to numerology, we've had books written on it from 1,200 years ago, right? So I know in that debate where you crushed that Muslim guy, you mentioned 500 years. So I wasn't sure if you meant it started 500 years ago or what you
I was
meant
just
by
giving
that.
you examples.
Oh, right, was an example. Yeah,
Yeah,
you just wanted to crush him on that. Yeah,
pretty
but
much.
the thing is,
I
yeah, yeah,
set him
the
up for
what
that one.
yeah, he didn't get it. I was
No,
trying to say like you won, and they were like, no, he never. I was like, he didn't even understand the
he
difference
didn't
between
understand the
an
difference, man.
individual and the concept being historical. Anyway, that's a separate point. But coming back to the point, so when it comes to numerology, we had it in Islam, like you said, from 1,200 years ago. But what happened was there was it became relegated into society. So with me, I always love things that are ignored. When society tells you something's wrong, I need to check it out and find out really is it wrong. Like you gave the example of stoning. A lot of Muslims believe it, but so I checked it out. It's fake news. There's no data to prove it. It's weak.
But
Or
but
for
but but
example, you
hold on, hold
mentioned
on, hold on, hold on. That's like one of my favorite things about Islam. I always show these women these stones. I'm like, behave.
no. So it's because stoning is a very harsh punishment. So there is a whole punishment for adultery,
What
but
is
it's
it?
not actually. So it's lashing.
Lashing, so they don't actually kill him.
No, they don't. They don't.
How many lashes do
So
you get? How many lashes do you get for cheating on your husband?
so it varies. It varies depending on the circumstance, how it happened, how many witnesses there were. So it varies. So it can even be, for example, admonishment. It could be 40 lashes. It depends on what the
What
situation
about
is.
honor
Again,
killings?
honor killing.
Honor killings. A lot of men, brothers, husbands, fathers, if their daughters become, whores, they start killing them themselves. They call it honor killings. What is your position on that?
So we don't have honor killings in Islam. That's something which is cultural. Again, if you're a
That's
father,
that's the Taliban and stuff like that.
yeah. I mean, it's cultural. So if you have a scenario where your daughter is acting like that, you failed. If anything, you should be punished because why haven't you given her the discipline? Why haven't you given the morals? Why haven't you given her the etiquettes to understand that you shouldn't be doing these things? Lashing out is your failure as a father, brother, or whatever it may be. Another one you mentioned was Age of Aisha. Remember the 9-year-old thing? I wanted to talk about that. So,
Mhm.
like, that's another example of I looked into it and it's not in the Quran, right? It's something that came.
So wait. Say Muhammad was not with a 9-year-old.
My position is he was not.
I mean, I've even had Muslim scholars tell me Muhammad wasn't with a 9-year-old who studied this
Yeah,
stuff for
yeah,
20, 30 years.
yeah,
What
yeah. But then,
what makes you say that that's completely BS? Because I've literally done debates in my podcast studio here,
yeah,
basically, and they told me, this is 100% real, and then they start giving me all the excuses in the world. And this is
yeah,
something that's being used against Islam all the time by Christians, by Jews,
yeah,
by Buddhists, that they're
yeah,
pedophiles. So please
yeah.
address that.
Of course, I wrote a thread on this anyway, but I will quickly address it on
Could
this.
you
So
repost that after we're done talking so people can go to your page and see it?
for real. And I actually said because I don't care. Like I smash these guys. Those guys who believe in it, I like you guys are like in this position, right? So I don't hold back, right? So when it comes down to it, yeah, the Quran doesn't mention it at all. The Quran does not mention it whatsoever. This is in secondary literature that came after that they claim that the Prophet said. But when I looked at the actual secondary literature, it's something that could be right from a theological perspective, or it could be wrong because it's man-made. Man said, "I heard this guy say it. Who heard this guy say it? Who heard this guy say it?" That narration is by the main narration of that is by a guy called Hisham bin Urwa. That guy was basically 80 years old and he lost his memory. His memory became extremely weak when he moved to Iraq and he narrated that narration. I say that is a fabricated narration.
Is that a position Sunnis hold or a position you hold?
It's a position I hold, but then a number of Sunnis do hold that position, but it's not the majority opinion.
Shiites, do they hold the exact opposite position?
I believe Shias hold more closer to my position.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. You're a Sunni, but your position is more with the other sect.
So a lot of my positions don't fall into one box because I'm not a sheep.
Okay. Um, I did. I went through your feed before we started talking. I've been through it a few times. I noticed a lot of Muslims call you out. I haven't actually seen Muslims call out that many Muslims, but a lot of them call you out. Why is that?
Like I said, because of the same reason I said, because I do not hold a position just because someone told me this is a position. I have got to research it. I have got to find it. I've got to look at the Quran and what it says. And for me, Quran is the word of God. It's never wrong. But man can be wrong. Humans can be wrong. So when humans make a statement, I've got to check it. Where did you get this information from? Where is the data from? So when I say, for example, about this numerology that it's allowed, it's because the Quran, as you said, is full of numerology. It's a numerical miracle. It's a linguistic miracle, but it's a numerical miracle also. In addition to that, in the early parts of Islam, we had people who did numerology, who were mathematical experts. For example, Al-Biruni worked out the circumference of the earth. In addition to that, we have scenarios where, when you look at it from a philosophical perspective, your soul, which is immaterial, possibly, is actually immaterial. Your body, which is material, there's some kind of link to it. And again, numerology or numbers actually give you an example of it, as well as these lost sciences. So it's not just numerology, it's astrology, it's physiognomy, it's a lot of these lost sciences which our people wrote about 1,200 years ago, but these guys now have basically relegated them or said that these guys are basically, you can't accept them. But these guys were geniuses. So Avicenna, as an example, was a genius. He did the appendix operation. He's wrote a book on numerology.
Oh.
So in Western society, we do appendix. He
Mhm.
was considered the foremost doctor. A lot of medicine that became Western medicine came from him. He wrote a book on numerology. He wrote a book on physiognomy. He wrote a book on astrology. So we have these experts from day one who were geniuses.
Okay. Let's get into numerology now. What is your birthday, my friend?
Mine is 1010.
What year?
84.
Okay, so you're okay, so you're like a 33-6. No wonder you believe in this stuff. I'm born in the year of the rat and a Libra. Okay, brother. So basically, you bear the responsibility of the world on your shoulders, and you're a hardworking man. And obviously, we see from this, that's one of the reasons you support Tate. You're born on the 10th, and he's born on the 1st. A lot of parallels there, brother. That's why you feel the same way, don't you?
100%. One, as you know, is leadership. You're born 7-1, isn't it? So 1 again, January, which is leadership position.
You travel quite a bit, don't you, my friend?
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. I'm looking at your numerology right now. You're not going to stop traveling, like, ever. You're always going to be on the go, man. You learn so quickly. The problem is you don't always remember what you learned 3-4 years ago, but you learn very quickly, don't you?
That's 100% true. Numerology works.
And let me ask you this, and if I'm wrong, tell me and tell the audience. Whenever there's something wrong, you sense danger in your gut and you start getting knots in your stomach.
100%.
Okay. So again, see, this is what happens when people give me their real birthday, not like that fraudulent shit. I really felt bad for Islam after he admitted he lied, because a lot of people watching that feed were not Muslims. And that person was their first representation of Islam. And the first thing they see a Muslim imam doing is lying. That's such a negative representation of Islam. And I want my followers to understand something. That man's a fool. Don't worry about what he says. Islam is not like that. My wife is a Muslim, okay? And one of the reasons I married a Muslim woman is because they're the least likely to be whores. I'm just going to put it out there. Muslim women are the least likely to be whores because they're raised right. They're absolutely raised right. Their father disciplined them. Things like that matter. As a matter of fact, one of the advices I give to people right now is, American woman, stay away from me. That's why I tell people to say, Lenny Kravitz all over it again. Find yourself a good foreign woman, preferably a Muslim, because they're most likely going to be loyal and devoted to their husbands and their families. And I'm telling you, this is a Jewish man.
So first of all, I completely agree with you. And I did watch your debate with him, because I'm not one of these people who pretends like, oh, I don't know you and that type of stuff. And you basically not only destroyed him, but that was a very, very bad thing that happened, because he initially lied. You called him out on it. He tried to backtrack and say, and what he tried to do was give a story, because in the story, in the Quran, what it says is, Ibrahim, the Prophet Ibrahim, he basically tries to prove that so basically people believe that idols are gods. And he says, look, these idols are not gods, and then he basically lies and says, look, ask the God, and the God can't do nothing, because he wants to demonstrate that it could be a fallacy. But that's not a lie, because you want to prove something wrong. What he did wasn't that, because he gave you a fake date of birth. That doesn't prove you wrong. All it proves is that you gave the right reading for that date of birth, not
Correct.
that you gave the wrong date of birth reading for him. If you'd given the right a reading for him and he said, look, that's false, that's how we could have disproven you if he
Correct.
didn't lie. So actually, again, lack of intelligence and a lack of understanding of how things work. So I just want to make that clear. But so I don't agree with what he did there. Now, in terms of let's do a bit of hours if that's all right with
That's
you.
fine.
So basically, this is a bit of physiognomy, this is a bit of numerology, and this is a bit of numerology and astrology, right? So as far as I know, you're 7 1 1977.
No, no, it's January 7th, 1978. I'm a 33 life path like you, except I got a couple more years and miles on me.
Okay. So you'll have to explain to you how I'm 33 in yours, because in hours we don't have 11, 22, and 33. We only have 1 to 9.
But see, master numbers are something special. Master numbers are in a different frequency. That's why most of the biggest events in world history always happen under 11s, 22s, and things of that nature. Again, let's look at the Arab Spring. This is something most Muslims would be very familiar with. They went after Gaddafi, who was born 6/7, 1942. He was an 11. They went after Mubarak, who was born 6/5/4, 1948. He was an 11. And they started this in 2011. This is not a coincidence. As a matter of fact, the Arab Spring, unless I'm wrong, started on February 11th, 2011. And we see what happened. And all went all the way down to Assad in Syria. And Assad in Syria was born on 9/11. And by the way, congratulations to Assad. He had every single group in the world going after him. He had the Saudis going after him. He had the Americans going after him. He had everyone going after him, even the Iranians to a point. They just wanted to put their own puppets in there. He survived. He survived. That man should be on everyone's artillery to read how he pulled that off. Because, yes, Russia helped him. But, I got to tell you, it was just straight mastery, what he pulled off.
100%. And to be honest, again, that was another example, another psyop, because within the Muslim community, everybody supported the rebellion. I was one of the only people who spoke out against it. And again, it shows following the masses, following the media, not understanding things. But anyway, let's come back to the point. So, like in physiognomy, just some aspects I'll talk to you about in terms of all of them. So, you're 1, which according to us is fire. You're 7, which according to us again is fire. So again, you're very fiery. You're a fiery person. You are arrogant as well, but you also
Nothing
are very
wrong with
smart.
that.
Yeah, leadership, and you basically want to do things extremely fast. Like you don't like waiting. Although from you being Capricorn, there is a bit of calmness in what you do.
I'm very strategic.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to come to that. So in physiognomy, you're basically friendly person, you're energetic but assertive and actually quite loyal. But sometimes you like to chill a bit as well, like you like to play around. So you have that kind of counterbalance where you like to relax.
Keep to myself a lot, man.
Yeah, right.
The only reason I'm a media personality is because I forced it. No one else could have pulled this off with numerology and astrology, so I had to do it. At the end of the day, I like to chill by myself, man. I keep to myself a lot, man. I'm born on the 7th. It is what it is. Let me ask you something, my friend.
And then your eyes, because you said about calculating. So your eyes tell me that, so that you really are strategic in every single thing.
Snake eyes.
Yeah.
Let me ask you something, my friend. How good are you at this sort of numerology? How long have you been studying this?
I'll be perfectly honest with you. I think you got my reading pretty right. So I did it for a good few years, and then I've not looked at it for a good few years as well.
Okay.
So I literally went back to just before this. I went back to my notes and I was like, let me read up on this stuff that I used to do, and check it out.
This is a sort of numerology that I don't practice and I don't know too much of. So if this is, I want to extend this offer to you. If this is something you're interested in, and you want to, take the dust off the old notes and keep looking at them, I know plenty of people who would be interested in learning this type of numerology that you're basically accustomed with. Is that something you want to do? I'll be more than happy to help you, have a platform where you can actually put that out there.
Yeah, we could look into that later. But the point is, this is not just numerology. I just want to be clear. It's numerology, astrology, and physiognomy, because your soul your soul, your body, because this world, as you say as well, because I know you said this, you say this is a matrix, but what you really mean is it's a projection,
Virtual
right?
reality.
Yeah, virtual projection. A projection of what though? So, for example, when it comes to our beings, our physical, this is my own position, by the way. So, when it comes to our physical bodies, it's a projection of our souls. So, our souls are what we really are, and then this becomes a projection, and the universe is a projection of something else. It's philosophical, but I don't want to get bore
Mhm.
your audience. So now, when you come
You're
down to
anything
it,
but boring, my friend.
yeah, no, I appreciate that. So now, when it comes down to it, look at your face tells you who you are,
Yeah.
what your soul is. It represents every single thing about you. So, for example, the fact that you got a big forehead, that means you're intelligent, right? So all of these things tell you that what you are
You're
as a
into face
person.
reading now.
Yeah, physiognomy. Avicenna wrote
You
a book
know,
on
you
it.
know, so if someone has a mole right here, it usually means
Yeah,
they're rich as fuck.
I know.
If someone has a mole right here, it means they're really sexual. So guys, if you see a woman who has a mole right around here, that means she's a freak. A free
Well,
game out
well,
there.
with you, it's you've got your dimples as well, so that's probably adds to that. You're into that. So it's all of those things, and
I
there was
married
one
a
point I
five
did want.
life path. I better be into that.
Yeah, so did I. So now coming back to the point.
Woo! You're a 33. I'm a 33. We both married fives. Look how
Yeah,
that
yes,
works. Look how that
exactly,
works. Numerology
exactly.
at work. You did well, my friend. And I know you're busy
Thank
in the bedroom if you marry the five.
you. So now there's something important I wanted to talk to you about, though, if that's all right.
Go ahead.
There's one point you made in one of the podcasts, and you said you don't like to worship because it takes energy away from you.
Let's hear it.
Can you expand? Yeah, can you expand on it? What you mean? Because I don't
No,
want to. I want to
I
understand your point.
believe that humans have free will,
100%.
and jinn and demons and angels do not. I do not
Possibly.
believe they have free will. So for them to worship a higher power, it's by force. For us,
100%.
we are actually giving away our energy. Now,
So
I
where
don't.
can I ask
I
a
hold on.
question?
Don't hold on.
Yeah,
I don't eat pork. I don't drink. I'm a
brilliant.
family man. I
Yeah,
pretty much promote everything in Sharia. The
you're a real
difference,
Muslim.
the difference is, I don't believe that I have to submit to do that. Now, if there's some people in society that need something to fear to do the right thing, so be it. I don't need to
Yeah,
fear anything to do the right thing. I'm going to do the right thing without fearing God. That is my position. And if you want to go any further on it, I agree there is a God, but I think the real debate isn't the one atheists have, that, is there a God or isn't there? I don't even think that's debatable. Look outside, look in the sky, look what the fuck's going on. Something created this, okay? Even if this is a virtual reality, something created the virtual reality. So again, there is a
100%.
God. The real question should be, is God benevolent? And if he is benevolent, that's one case. But if he isn't benevolent, why are you freely giving away your power and your energy to a being that might not actually be all loving?
So can I just ask you a question? Then I do want to
Yeah,
answer your
go
point
ahead.
because I agree. I agree with half of it, and then I don't agree with a bit of it. So why do you think praying is a way of giving away your energy?
Because when you actually, I believe that us humans can manifest. I believe human beings have the ability to manifest things. And I believe when they openly submit, that's how they give away their energy. That is my belief. I believe that gods feed off emotional energy. And I believe we're like little bees that go around like collecting pollen, in our case, energy. And then when we submit, and then when we actually, pray, we freely give away that energy to a god. Now, I personally believe that if less people actually prayed, I believe the gods would be less powerful. That's my personal opinion.
Okay, so I'll explain from my perspective. First of all, I agree with the first point you made. You are more Muslim than nearly most Muslims, right? And actually, the higher order, the higher spirituality of a person is what you said. It's not you submit out of fear. It's not that you do the right thing because you're afraid you're going to get punished. You do it because it's the honorable and right thing to
Yeah.
do. And that actually elevates your soul a lot more. So this is the Islamic position. Now, in terms of what you said, in terms of the only disagreement I have with you is when you pray that you're giving your energy, because that's anthropomorphizing God. It's actually, I believe it's the other way around. So when you basically are praying
Mm-hmm.
or you're doing some form of Islamic meditation,
Mm-hmm.
you're receiving energy.
Mm-hmm.
You're receiving that strength. So as I'm walking through this universe, I'm getting, as
Mhm.
you said, like we're a bee, we're receiving certain amounts of energies. Someone's an evil guy, you start losing a bit of your energy, right?
Mhm.
I think you may agree with that. But when you're receiving that energy, and it's not directly from God, like in terms of an anthropomorphic perspective, but let's just use it in this context. You're actually receiving that energy. So let me give you an example in Islamic numerology. So in Islamic numerology, your name is Gary. And I did quickly check it out before that because, like I said, I haven't looked at this for a while. So what we do is each person based on Gary, because in Arabic it's so on and so forth. Your number is 1121, right? Now that is connected to certain names of God, right? And your ones are, and you'll make sense, you'll agree with this, I think. One of them is the originator, because you're original. You always originate things. And the more you were to meditate and use that word, that you'd get that energy. You'd receive that energy and you're able to use that even more. And the other one is the provider. I'm guessing you're probably, I mean, I've seen your videos where you say you're well off. I'm guessing you are a provider for the people around you.
Yeah,
So
well,
again,
I have about 30, 35 people working for me, and they're doing work as a numerologist. So I probably not only doing numerology myself, I probably hired more numerologists than there are anywhere else in the world.
yeah. So now in this Islamic numerology, if you were to use those words,
Hmm.
just meditate on them,
Hmm.
your energy would increase in
Hmm.
even doing them aspects, and
Okay.
your total energy would increase.
Okay. Let me
So
ask you. Let
for
me
me,
ask.
that's just a slight disagreement. I
I
think
got
it's
you. I
you
got you.
receiving
And
energy. Yeah.
again, we're intelligent people. That's what we're here to do. We're here to
Yeah.
debate, disagree, and see if we can find common ground.
Nice.
When I look at Islam, my biggest issue with Islam is reincarnation. Numerology has taught me that there's old souls and there's young souls. Numerology has taught me that different numbers have different challenges. And basically, from my standpoint, the way I see things, it seems to me that people have a mission in life based off if they're ones and twos or threes or fours or things of that nature. And when they pass that mission, they evolve to the next set of challenges. That that is contrary to Islam. Islam.
It's
Hold on, hold on. At least the Islam I've heard. Okay, you might say something completely different because, brother, I've never met a Muslim like you. Okay, I'm just gonna be completely honest. The only Muslims I've met close to you were in the House of Saud. That's it. And I never, talked to them in person just like you. So I want to make this abundantly clear. You're a little bit different, but from the imams I talk to, the preachers I talk to, they are very against reincarnation. And that to me, my friend, is a red flag. Because everything I've seen as a numerologist shows me that people who have souls are here to learn specific missions, pass those tests, move on to the next level. And that's why we see people like master numbers 11s, 22s, 33s, who are usually leading society, whether it be Joe Rogan, born on the 11th, or Barack Obama, who's still the shadow president of the United States, who's an 11 life path. I always see, how do you think people, clowns like Aiden Ross make it, born on 11th, or a clown like Logan Paul? I mean, hell, I
yeah.
could talk all the shit about Tate all I want. He's 100 times better than this motherfucker. So when it comes
Yeah.
down to it, I want people to understand I have a big issue with what most people in Islam say about reincarnation. Having said that, go ahead, sir.
Yeah. So just to give you, like, my daughter's at 11 and my sons are 22 as well. So it's all
You
in the
know
family.
exactly what I'm
But
talking about then.
yeah, exactly. But now coming back to the
And
point.
you're at
So
33.
yeah, but you have to explain to me how I am actually. But
So I'll do it real quick. So you're
yeah,
born on 1010, right?
yeah.
Okay. So the 10th can be taken as a 10, or it can be taken as a 1 plus 0. So if you do 1 plus 0, then 10, 1984, it adds up to 33. So you're what we call a 33-6. You go back and forth between both vibrations. Sometimes you're more of a homebody. Sometimes you want to be just left alone and stuff like. Sometimes you want to kick the world's ass. When you're in that kick the world's ass phase, that's you being a 33. The fact that you have an 11 as your first child, and you married a 5. By the way, brother, my first child is an 11. And again, I married a 5 too. So you see how this is working. You see how this works. The chances of us having all that the same, we're talking about less than 1%, bro.
100%. I agree. So I just want to answer the reincarnation. So look, and I might take a few minutes because it's a bit
Go ahead.
complex. So
we're not on the time limit here, brother.
Nice. So look, within Islam, right, we have this idea that each person has their own test, as you said. Each person has their own mission. Look, and no one can deny that, because look, each person has different. Even if you don't even look at it from the soul aspect, you look at it from the materialistic aspect. Some people are intelligent. Some people are dumb. Some people have looks.
A lot of people are dumb.
Yeah, a lot of people are dumb. So, but then just think about it from a fairness perspective. If it's someone who's dumb, do you think it's fair that his test or his mission is going to be the same as someone who's intelligent? No, the person who's intelligent, God's going to expect more of him, because he's given you the intelligence, he's given you the ability, he's given you, as you said, the 33 life path, whatever it may be, he's given you this. So now you need to make sure that you've done much more than somebody who is basically not being given the same skill set, right? Maybe they've been given a different skill set and somewhere else. So everyone having an individualized mission is something that is agreed, is that we all agree on. But even within the theological framework within Islam, we have this individualistic belief. So even when it comes to somebody who needs to believe in God, there is this position within theology held by the majority, actually, but again, not popular, is that even when it comes to belief of God, the person who is not as smart, he might take longer to believe in God, and someone who's smart will take shorter. So therefore, there's a different rules and there's a different test for both of them in terms of looking and to see if they pass it. Now, what happens when you pass the test? So for you, what you think reincarnation is, and this is just where the disagreement is. You think reincarnation is you get reincarnated and you come exactly back to this world, right? Maybe that's what you believe, right?
Yes.
But the only difference is that Muslims believe that this soul continues, but now they've been reincarnated into a different world.
I disagree with that. I understand. This is the same thing that Islam preachers are telling me. First, you're a fetus, then you get reincarnated into a human. Then, I understand the caterpillar to butterfly. I understand that.
No. So I mean, is you go to heaven, right? Now the question becomes, what is heaven? So most Muslims believe heaven is this kind of like place of bliss where you don't have free will and whatever it may be. But some people within the minority, and I think that position may be stronger, it's another matrix. It's another matrix. And that's why when God explains it in these complex ways where we can't even understand it, it's because it's a different projection. But we're not used to that projection because it's a totally different projection. So that soul now is going through a different situation and they need to deal with
I don't disagree with any of that. What I'm trying to tell people is, yes, there's another level into the matrix. That's why we're in 3rd level right now. There's 4th density. That's why they're called the 4 horsemen. So again, there is different levels to the matrix, 100%. My disagreement is, I believe you're on this 3rd dimensional plane until you fulfill every single life lesson of the 1, the 3, the 4, all the way down to the 9, then 11, 22, 33. I think that's what it takes a soul to go through every single reincarnation. And by the way, most people fail their reincarnations. For instance, if you're a 1 life path and you're not a leader, fail. If you're a 5 life path and you're just a fucking whore everywhere, fail. If you're an 8 life path and all you care about is money, fail. So to me, it's about passing the test on this dimensional plane, going through different existences, different lifetimes with the same soul. And then I agree, once you pass all the missions here, then you can go to heaven or 4th density, whatever you want to call it.
But let's take your example then. So let's say you're a 1 and you fail to be a 1. What happens? You get reincarnated.
You get reincarnated, you do the same mission until you pass it.
So you stay as a 1 until you succeed, then you become, like, for example, okay.
You have to learn your lesson. There has to be accountability. And I believe that's not just with humans, it's with souls as well. You have to be accountable. That's what karma's for.
No. So in Islam, we believe in accountability, because whatever you've done in this world, you're gonna be accountable, right? You are accountable.
Unless you're a woman.
Yeah, but even with God, you're accountable, so it only works in this world. But in terms of when you look at from your position is actually you're gonna keep. It's actually almost a woman. We're gonna keep giving you chances. We're gonna keep giving you chances. We're gonna keep a good chance until you pass. So
Pretty much.
everyone's gonna get a trophy. But in
No, no, no,
in
no, no,
this
no, no,
one,
no. Not everyone gets a trophy. You have to pass your mission and you keep failing. So it's the exact opposite. You don't get a trophy until you pass. And by the way, I believe some souls have failed thousands and thousands of lifetimes. And I believe some souls have lived hundreds of lifetimes and they've made it to master numbers. And some souls have lived thousands and have not. I believe it makes sense on the individual, but again, it's how much work you put in. If you're
let's
going to
take
be
your example.
if you're going to
Let's take
be
your
hold on,
example.
if you're going to be a rich person and all you do with your life is buy prostitutes and buy drugs and stuff like that, that's a failed reincarnation, at least in my opinion. But go ahead.
Okay. So you're a 33, right?
Correct.
So that is the top. That is the top. So
In my opinion, yes.
Yeah. So when you succeed, what happens?
I hopefully I enlighten enough people, then I'll have to come back to this place.
Where
If
do you
I
go?
fail, I fail. I'll be
If you
right
pass.
back here with the rest of you.
No, but if you pass.
I hope I do too, brother. This shit's tiring.
No, but if you pass, what happens?
I believe I go to fourth density.
And what's fourth density?
I don't believe that our human minds are capable of even understanding what it is. You know, just like I can't see the wind, but if I put my hand outside the car window, I can feel it. I don't know exactly what's in fourth density. All I know, it's the higher level.
So what you're describing is the Muslim version of heaven.
Whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
You know,
So
but then again, I think there's fifth density. I think there's sixth density. I think there's seventh density. A matrix within the matrix within the matrix within the matrix. That's my personal belief, and I believe that the souls who are basically running shop right now, the world leaders, I believe they are reincarnated world leaders from past lifetimes too. You know, I'm of the version that Caesar never died. Napoleon is immortal. Genghis Khan is immortal. Why? Because we remember them and we put their thoughts out there. They will never die. Their spirits are connected within this third dimensional plane. If you put your name out there and people remember you, you will be immortal. Not in physically, but spiritually.
You know, that makes sense because that is the point. And what you mean by that is not from a physical aspect, but people remember you. And in a way, if you're remembered, in a way, you have some form of life. I get what you mean. It's actually
you know, a lot of people ask, Gary, there's different calendars in the world. How does your numerology work with one calendar and not the rest? I will be so happy to explain that. English is the dominant language in the world. More people speak Mandarin, but if you go to India, if you go to China, if you go to Russia, you're going to see the highway signs are in English. Because English is the dominant language. Because English is the dominant language, the spelling within that language, and it's called spelling for a reason, you're casting a spell, is going to be that much stronger. Because right now, it's August the 2nd, 2023, because billions of people believe it is August the 2nd, 2003, that energy will manifest. Okay. If the people believed it was 283 BC, that's what the numerology would manifest, because this is a virtual reality and it takes what people's energy is from their minds and it creates this matrix. So what people believe actually is out there. That's what I believe is the hidden link to why numerology and astrology works. What do you think? I didn't ask myself these same questions.
I agree with you there. And to add to what you're saying, in addition to that, I also believe that the words that release from your mouth also impact it. So, for example, if your name is Gary, right? So think about it. People are using that word, the Gary, and that is impacting you from an energy perspective.
100%.
Hence why, like I said, when I was talking about your name, Gary, and how it's connected to certain meditation points, is because words have an impact, words have strength, and they do have some energy vibrations that impact you and make you into who you are. And hence why, when you look at the aspects of your name, is actually what I gave some of your reading based on, because again, Gary,
so you're basically using gematria.
but Arabic one.
Yeah, I got you. I call it letterology because I want to put this out there. I believe most people who are using gematria full time without understanding what numerology is are mentally ill. They're gonna make themselves psychotic. Just because someone died at 63 doesn't mean the score of the Jets Raiders game is going to be 6-3. Some people just take it too far, and then then what happens is we're guilty by association. Because we're in the same sphere, they're going to link us in with these idiots. The same way the Taliban goes around, doing certain things, and people in America think, oh, this is what all Muslims do. It couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah. So you don't. So you, just to be clear, you do believe in it, but you just believe that these guys are off it when they don't understand the entire concept, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Cool.
We're having an interesting conversation here, man. You are definitely a very, very open-minded individual. Let's go to the Rothschilds now. Let's go to Zionism. I'm a Jewish man. I believe that Zionists have committed more damage in this world by promoting feminism, by promoting homosexuality, by breaking up the household. I believe they've caused a lot of damage in society. And I believe the reason they do this is for divide and conquer tactics. I believe they believe that if everyone in the world was singing Kumbaya, they start looking at them. I think that's basically what's going on. What is your opinion on Zionism? And maybe you like to bring up the Palestinian issue because I saw you tweeted about that and things of that nature.
So first of all, I agree with you. So let's be clear. I want to make a distinction between Judaism and Zionism because actually Judaism.
Listen
as
up, Kanye West.
Yeah. So Judaism as a theology, I have studied it, right? To a certain extent. It is very good. From a theological framework and their view about the way God is, brilliant, right? It's very close to my own position in terms of within Islam. So let's be clear on that. Now, when it comes to Zionism itself, it did come out from exactly what you said. And you're one of the few people who said what I actually think, that in reality, what happened is, let's be honest, Jews were oppressed for centuries, for a significant period of history, right? And so what happened? They thought, you know what? The Zionists came and then they said, you know what should we do about it? We need to make sure that we're not the targets anymore. And so therefore these kind of agendas came to play. I totally agree with that. And so I have an issue with Zionism, and I have an issue with, as you said, some of the impacts that they have within society. So yeah, the Palestinian issue is a highly problematic issue because people are oppressed on there. But then a lot of wars are happening because of Zionism, and I'm against any kind of death. And I think you will be as well, based on the fact that you believe in numerology, because we in there as well, death is a big impactful in terms of from that aspect as well. Now, in terms of from that perspective, yeah, Zionism has caused a huge problem. And if you look at it from the media perspective, now I'm not saying all Jews are in charge of media, but they have an impact. And so when you have an impact,
Zionist
you can use that
Jews.
Zionists, yeah. So sorry, did I say Jews there? All right, so let me be clear. I didn't mean Jews. I mean Zionists. So Zionists have a huge impact in Hollywood, and it's not just Jewish Zionists. Actually, even some Christian Zionists as well.
You talk about a sheep. You talk about a lackey being a Christian Zionist. Are you out your fucking mind? I don't even.
Exactly.
I don't understand how someone could be Christian and be a Zionist any more than I can understand how someone could be Muslim and LGBT.
Exactly, it doesn't make sense. But again, people are dumb and they've been manipulated. Now, I do think that when it comes to society, we agreed Hollywood is a huge issue. We agreed the music industry is a huge issue. They're destroying the family. They're putting schools. They're taking away our children. They're taking away everything. Like, they're destroying the population. And you know how population works is, people are like, oh, if there's less population, it doesn't matter. It matters significantly, because how society works is this. Maybe 1,000 years ago, 100 years ago, we had less people, but society was built on those less people. Now society is built on this large number of people. If we have a
Who's going to take care of that?
Yeah, and if we have a significant shift, the entire population will collapse, right? So this is a huge problem, and I do think that that has played a major role.
How many people do you think this is going to kill?
I mean, I really don't know. We know from the data that it has impacted people significantly. You saw, for example, a study that came out recently that it caused blindness to almost I think it was double or triple of the people that ever had blindness before. You saw studies now where it's impacted children significantly on 50%. I think that, but more so than that, I think the LGBTQ agenda and feminist agenda in schools is probably going to be much, much worse in terms of impact.
Okay. I want to talk about Islam and LGBT. I believe that Islam is the counterbalance to LGBT. I believe the Christians, unless they're in, Russia or Poland or one of those countries, they've pretty much submitted. I believe the Zionist Jews, in a lot of cases, are funding this movement, but I also think the Zionists are funding Islam. I also believe that it's in Jewish people, Zionist best interest to spread Islam. And for people who think that's not possible, let's not forget when the Jews or the Zionists were thrown out of Spain because they were running all the banks, and when they were basically thrown out and exiled, they basically called the Moors in, which was basically a Muslim tribe. And the Moors came in there and conquered Spain and part of France for about 700 years. That's why the French people look very Caucasian and the Spanish people got a lot more, darkness to them because all those white women in Spain were raped. And basically, we have a new race that was basically formed. My question to you is, doesn't every single race suppress other races? Doesn't every single religion suppress other religions? Because this is what we've seen since the beginning of time. So when I see what the Jews are doing now, my opinion is this: if it wasn't them, it'd be someone else.
So, I mean, it is the nature of certain people to basically oppress. Now, coming on to Spain, obviously, I do think the Jews and Muslims were oppressed, and it was actually the Muslims who supported the Jews in that scenario because
But they opened up the gates. They were thrown out of Spain because of their banking by the kings of those days. And they came back, they opened the gates, and the Moors came in there, and they basically ran shop for 700 years, and the Jews were the bankers. Jews never want to be the ones who are doing the dirty work. The Zionists always want to have the money. They just want to control things from the other angle.
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of Spain specifically, like I said, I think we have a slight disagreement. I do think that obviously I understand what your point is, that there was some kind of impact from behind the closed doors, but at the same time, they were oppressed quite a bit there as well. Now, in terms of what you said, look, humans are humans. It doesn't matter if you're black, blue, white, yellow, Muslim, Christian, Jew. It doesn't matter what you are. Unfortunately, what happens is people have a tendency to oppress. And so what happens is it takes the good individuals, people like us, people who are not controlled, who are not sheep, to speak out when this oppression happens. I'll give you an example. So, for example, in Pakistan, there was basically a Christian woman who had been oppressed, right? So I wrote articles. I talked about how this was wrong. So it does happen, but what the difference is to what level does it happen? So, for example, now what's happening in, for example, in to the Uyghur Muslims, or what's happening in, for example, Rohingya, what's happening in Burma,
Interesting how the Muslim leaders are very quiet when it comes to the
Very
Uyghurs in China.
Exactly,
Interesting how no one in Saudi Arabia, Iran, they won't say a word to the Chinese because there's a price to pay. There's an economic price to pay. But with America, there's never a price to pay because they actually encourage self-hate in America. But in China, you try that shit, they're going to fucking shut you down.
Well, it's that as well. I agree with you, but there's other layers to it as well. So, for example, I mean, there's a reason why, for example, people are fighting for Palestinians as opposed to, and first of all, I do support the Palestinian cause, but it's kind of disproportionate how much people speak about Palestine as opposed to, for example, Xinjiang, as opposed to Burma, as opposed to Rohingya. So again,
Yemen.
there's like Yemen, exactly, Saudi's attack on Yemen. So again, all these examples are, like you said, unfortunately, people are not have different biases. I do think there's certain, like, as we know, everything sometimes boils down to actual like sexual attraction as well. So there's a lot of these aspects that come into it that actually impact these kind of decision making. I'm not saying that's the only reason. There's a multitude of reasons, but I think it's totally unacceptable. Basically, when people talk about certain atrocities and not others, and also I think any kind of atrocity that happens by any community is unacceptable. But unfortunately, humans are humans.
Okay. Speaking of atrocities, I think there's going to be one in about 15, 20 years. I think it's going to start in Europe. I'm not sure people will be too sad about it, though. I believe that LGBT and Islam are incompatible. I believe that what Gaddafi said will come true. Gaddafi said that we will beat them with our wombs. Since 2015, the refugee crisis, the Muslim population in France, Germany, the UK is going up. Once it hits about 35 to 40%, the Muslims are not going to put up with the LGBT. Here's my prediction. I want everyone to understand this. I believe that the LGBTQ community will be cleansed by Islam within 20 years. I believe it's going to start in Europe because they are incompatible. Absolutely incompatible. And I'm going to tell people this: choose. Pick a side. It's that simple. I will never be a Muslim. I will never get down on my all fours and pray to Allah, but I will support Muslims because I am not an idealist. I believe it's better to deal with the devil you know than the devil you don't. And I'm going to tell you right now, Muslims are not trying to molest my kids, no matter what you people say. Muslims are not trying to basically indoctrinate my kids into fucking garbage. I'm pretty sure I can go to a Muslim country, go to a movie, and I don't have to watch pornography and all sorts of other shit. I believe that pornography needs to be banned worldwide, and that needs to happen ASAP. And I look forward to an Islamic caliphate and to a point, because a lot of that shit's going to get banned. A lot of this sexual trafficking is going to get banned. One thing I do fear, though, is I ain't paying no fucking jizya, brother. I'm not doing it. I am not paying no freaking jizya. And I'm going to make this abundantly clear right now. After the Muslims clean up with the LGBT, if they think they're going to start having a caliphate all around the world and you're going to subjugate basically non-Muslims to pay a tax called a jizya, nah, brother, that's unacceptable. And I think that's going to be a big problem in the world in about 30 years.
Okay. So just a few points I need to make on that. So first things first, I totally agree with you in terms of Islam being literally the only religion, the only ideology that's even willing to stand up against this kind of LGBTQ
Allah
ideology.
Akbar.
And if you look at the UK is a prime example of that.
Yeah.
So in the UK, we have the Muslim population that's only increased slightly. So we went from 3% to 4.5%, I think, 5%.
But it's bigger in France, though, isn't it? Should be about 10, 15% over there.
I think it's about 8 to 12%, but again, I don't know.
Yeah, but a couple more generations, it gets up there. You know, we're talking about real percentages. Then you're gonna have a real change.
But I've just given the UK as example because that's where I'm from. So in the UK, even though Islam increased slightly, Christianity died. It's dead. So it was, and remember, this is the country that fought for Christianity. Wars were fought over Christianity. Christianity in 2011 was about 67 to 70%. You know what it is now? 40%. It's in the 40s. It's a minority religion in the UK. You know what's taken that 15 or 20%? Atheism. And
that's worse. That's worse.
Yeah, so that's the liberal leftist ideology that's taking over the UK. Now, let me explain to you why that's a problem. So in schools, they wanted to teach LGBTQ to children from as young as age 4.
Over my dead body.
Well, let me tell you what happened in the UK. So in the UK, the Christians didn't speak out. The Jewish people didn't speak out. The only people who spoke out was the Muslims. But the Muslims are a very small minority. So they lost. And now sex education, LGBTQ education is taught to kids at age 4, where they learn about, unfortunately, masturbation.
What the fuck does a 4-year-old need to know about masturbation for? This is sick. This is absolutely, these are fucking Satanists that need to be fucking dealt with. I'm sorry, this shit gets me upset.
Yeah, it gets me upset. This is why I would never send my kids to like a state school.
Never.
Because it's law. It's a law. They have to learn it. Now, coming back to the point, the only hope is Islam that is able to fight it. Now, when you talked about jizya, what jizya is because there's an incorrect understanding of jizya. Jizya is a taxing system
on non-Muslims.
On non-Muslims,
okay.
Yeah, for sure. But then remember, we also have taxation within to Muslims as well. So it isn't like
it's a higher tax. People who pay jizya is a higher tax on non-Muslims traditionally within the Ottoman Empire. This is something I've studied myself. The jizya tax was higher for non-Muslims. Now, you can make the argument that the Ottoman Empire took over a lot of Christian nations, and the people who are subjugated were living better under Ottoman rule than they were under their own government. That you can make that argument. You'd be right in a lot of cases, but a jizya is still higher tax for a non-Muslim than it is for a Muslim traditionally.
No. So traditionally, it is a higher. No. So within the Ottoman Empire, when it came to taxation system, actually, in a large period of time, not large. Let me rephrase that. For a period of time, the jizya and the Muslim taxation was the same, because what you're thinking of is zakah, which isn't taxation. So we have a separate taxation system compared to zakah. So zakah is 2.5%. Jizya used to be like 10%, depending on what it was.
And that's a big
Now,
difference.
No, but zakah isn't a tax system. That's what I'm trying to tell you. So zakah, so the tax system on Muslims in a lot of times was the same. So people, what they do is incorrectly compare the 2.5% to 10%. The 2.5% isn't tax. 2.5% is basically on your wealth, because what they want is they don't want people to be hoarders. You know, people who hoard their money and don't put money into the economy. So anyone who hoards money and keeps it for over a year, you have to now give 2.5% zakat. That's not a tax system. Tax system's totally different. So
just to hold back. So say you're a millionaire and you decide not to put any of your money into the economy. They have a right to take 25K from you? 2.5%?
Yes. So if you keep $1 million and put it in the bank, never invest it, never use it on any kind of products, you know, house, car, whatever it may be, on your family, on food, you just lock it away for a year. So a year you leave it untouched. After a year, you'll be taxed but zakah, you'll be given.
So Islam doesn't encourage people to save money?
Islam doesn't encourage people to hoard money. So you save, but then once you save, you only give 2.5%, which goes to the poor. And what Islam encourages is investment. So invest in the economy, make the economy better, and then everyone becomes richer.
So if you have millions of dollars and you put your money into the economy and be a capitalist, which is essentially what you're telling me here, you are rewarded by not being taxed.
You're rewarded by not having to give zakah. Yeah.
I don't see a problem with that. As a matter of fact, I've made numerous podcasts where I said these billionaires who keep their money, locked away, if they invest within the economy and provide jobs for people and do things of that nature, I don't think they should be taxed at all. They're actually taking a risk by trying to put their money into the economy and doing something, being good capitalists. So basically what you just told me is Islam supports capitalism.
Yes, it does.
I see. Why did so many Muslim countries support communism in the past then?
I mean, that was just political, isn't it? Because like you said, look, China is a good example. So China, as we both discussed, oppresses the Uyghur Muslims, right? And yet, despite that, Pakistan is like, we need the money, we need the help.
No, yeah, Pakistan would crumble without Chinese money.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not. Yeah, sorry.
No. One of the funniest things about Saudi Arabia and Pakistan is, throughout history, the Saudis have used the Pakistanis as basically mercenaries, and they still can't take out these Houthi rebels backed by Iran. It just seems like the Iranians take military power seriously. It seems like Turkey takes military power seriously. It seems like the Saudis are more concerned about luxury, and maybe buying some F-16s and having some shiny planes to actually show off. But are they ever going to build a legitimate military, or is it every time they're in trouble, let's throw Pakistan 100 million and see how many troops we can get? Am I wrong for saying this?
No, you're completely right. And the real question we should be asking ourselves is, like, what's the real reason for it? And we know the real reason for it, because Saudis, they basically were given this money. They never earned it. They were given the wealth. They've never been able to fight it. They haven't got the physical capabilities, the mental capabilities to build.
Mental?
I mean, what I mean by that is, So what I mean is
So so
natural
so so
intelligence.
so you're telling me the leadership of Saudi Arabia is lacking intelligence compared to Iran and Turkey.
No, no. So the current leader I can't speak of, but what I mean is, if you look at a society that is essentially being bred in a certain way, and look, breeding has a big impact, right? So, for example, now you married your wife, and you base your children are hybrids, right? So your children are going to be better than someone who's not a hybrid, right? And so if
That
you,
I will say that's personal opinion. I will say that has more to do with personal opinion
no,
because
no, I can prove it.
I could also say that a lot of uh well, I'll just fucking say it. A lot of mixed kids in America, usually black and white. I've seen a lot more bipolarism in mixed race kids than I've seen in almost anyone else. I mean, if you went to the Black Lives Matter rallies in America, it was always the mixed ones who were screaming the loudest and doing all the most of the violence. It
Well,
wasn't the darks. It wasn't the dark brothers. It wasn't the light skin brothers. It was usually the mixed ones. So
and
again, that is light skin, but I'm talking about it wasn't the whites, it
I
wasn't the
get you.
blacks, it was the
But the,
mixed. And this is
yeah,
something I've seen with my own eyes. And again, I'm about to take some heat for saying this, but it's just
no, no, let's talk
straight. And
about
no,
it.
not from you,
No,
but
no,
from Twitter. It
yeah,
is straight up fact that I believe that if people are mixed race, bipolarism goes up a lot. And that's something I've seen with my own eyes. So that's why I'll push back. When you say hybrids are always more intelligent, I'll say one thing: hybrids are fucking beautiful. I mean, the women that come from mixed races are absolutely gorgeous. That's again my personal opinion.
okay. So there's a couple of aspects to it. So when I say all, I don't mean all, I mean generally, right? Now, when it comes to the point of, in terms of what you said, there's actually a reason for that. And the
So you
reason
agree?
is, no, yeah, I agree with what
So
you
you
said.
agree?
In,
People who are mixed race are more likely to be bipolar.
not bipolar, but I'll explain to you the reasoning why you're seeing them in these rallies, right?
Hmm.
So the reason why, when you see mixed race kids, as you said, in the Black Lives Matter movement, and also the complete opposite alt-right movement, is, so the two opposites, is because of, again, this lack of feeling. It's because they feel deficient, and they're either, if they're mixed race, they want to prove they're black, and then therefore they'll do that, or they want to prove they're white, and then they'll be extremely racist. So you'll see this kind of dichotomy that happens within them. But if this nurture aspect didn't happen, this feeling deficient didn't happen, you would have, it would be better. And let me give you some proofs of just why I'm making this
Hmm.
argument. It's historical. So if you look at India, right? So in India, you had the harem system, and the harem system was, and you had it in China as well. So and throughout the world, but in India, you had the harem system, and what happened is the harem would basically take all the most beautiful women, the best stock, as you call it. I'm probably
A
gonna get
bunch of
cancelled for calling it like
concubines.
that, but yeah, I don't mean it in a derogatory way in case you're trying to cancel people. What I mean is that you take them and they'd put him in the harem, and he may not even have relations with them, but they'd be taken out of society. And so when you take them out of society, and then you're an ethnocentric nation, because now you're just based breeding within yourself, what happens is the levels start dropping. So what you're producing starts dropping. And so that's why you saw in, for example, Asia, from where I'm from, the they're not as good physical specimens. They're not as good from a lot of other aspects. And that is
You're
because the
raw,
harem.
brother. You're raw out here.
Yeah, yeah. So so all of those things happen because that's how evolution works, right? And so, whereas when you see other societies, when that harem, what happened is when they were up to the age of 18, they let them go again. So if they didn't have relations with them, they'd let them go back into society, and then they'd breed. And so, so that's an example of why, what happens over time, where these things have a big
I
impact.
got you. I'm telling you from personal experience. I have seen people who are mixed, especially black and white, who will flip on you in a second, and they're a lot. Like for instance, if society in general is 2% bipolar, I would say people who are mixed within black and white tend to be 25 to 30% bipolar. I've seen it with my own eyes, and I'm going to say another thing. If you're a woman and you start sleeping around with too many men within one menstrual cycle, you're going to be mentally ill too. There's a reason the word men isn't mentally ill, because if you're a whore and you're sleeping around with a whole bunch of different men, women basically absorb energy, guys give energy. So when it comes down to them, I think an army of whores is more dangerous than the standing army, because what you have, at least here in the United States, feminism basically it has these women going around, sleeping around with a whole bunch of guys. They don't know who the father is. Could you imagine 100 years ago if someone didn't know who the father was? If you're a woman, you might commit suicide because you would face so much pushback and so much shame. Now these women go out there and say, shout out your abortion. These women have become mentally deranged. And I'm going to tell you something, brother. You said some controversial things. I've said something, but I'm going to tell you right now, I don't believe any of these problems can be fixed until women's right to vote is stripped. And I understand some women are listening saying, yo, Gary, I'm a conservative. I support family values. I support everything you're saying. But I'm going to tell those same women, you're outnumbered. You're basically outnumbered. Look what happened in this stolen election in 2020. Most of married women voted for Trump by 3-4%. Married women voted for Trump. Single mothers voted for Biden 40% more than Trump. That is the problem right there. These whores can't close their legs, and then they start spreading their socialistic garbage on the rest of society. Women hold 3/4 of the fucking debt in America. 3/4 of the debt. Why does no one talk about this? Why does no one bring this up? When they start talking about equal pay for equal rights, I don't see women fucking climbing telephone poles and fixing stuff like that. They're never going to do that stuff. And at the end of the day, it's men who died and bled for rights. The only thing women actually did was march for rights when it was safe.
Right. So just a few points. And by the way, I agree with most of what you said. So
common theme here.
Yeah. So exactly. So the 33, isn't it? So now coming back to the point, I agree with you. And in reality, when them women are sleeping around, they're only sleeping with a certain percentage of men. Because actually, most men in the United States, but throughout the world, are basically not even having a relation. So 30% of
40% of men don't have babies. Only 14% of women don't have babies. What does that mean? That means a whole bunch of women are sleeping with the same guy.
And 30% of under 30-year-old men are not even having sexual relations at all.
Lame.
Yeah. So in addition to that, when you look at society, I agree with you. So when they talk about equal rights and equal pay, they're only talking about it from a woman's perspective, because the same people aren't talking about giving equal pay to a disabled person. They're not talking about disabled spots getting paid at the same level. They also, when you look at the pay, they're working a lot less, but they want to get paid a lot more.
Of course.
In terms of voting, I don't think you've said anything controversial. I agree with you completely, but I'll actually take it one step further. I think anyone who's not smart shouldn't vote either, because dumb people
say that again?
is someone who's not smart shouldn't vote either.
Oh, so you think there should be an IQ test?
Not an IQ test, only because I think IQ's test has a problem in
Agreed.
I think there's some issues there, but there should be some kind of system put in place where you need to meet the requirements, and then only then you're able to vote.
What about only people who are landowners? That's how it used to be as well. Only people who are landowners had the right to vote because they understood that the people who didn't have land would always vote for higher taxes. So that's why they basically said, back in the day, one family, one vote. If you own land, then you can actually vote on taxing because you're the one paying all the taxes. One of my good friends, he paid $300 million in taxes in 1 year. $300 million. And then I hear all these people talking about rich people need to pay their fair share. Are you fucking freaking kidding me? 300 million? Brother, I would have disavowed my American citizenship and ran off somewhere with $300 million. But there's people out there who are having to pay that in taxes, and you communist scumbags want more from them. It's absolutely ridiculous, man.
So I do believe that there needs to be taxation because
not theft?
No, because look,
okay.
At the end of and I'll explain why. Look, some of us are good are the unique people, right? We're able to get from poverty and make it to the top of the mountain, right? Tate is another example of that. He was from the ghetto, he was from the ends, and he made it to the top.
And so are you. and so was
Yes.
I. And I was
Yeah.
poor as hell. My dad came from the
Yes.
Soviet Union, and I'm a millionaire now. I'm sure you're doing good. So Tate's not the
Yes.
only one. So go ahead.
No, no, but I'm saying there's not that many. There's only a few of us, isn't there? Right?
Well,
In
there's
reality,
22 million millionaires in the United States alone. So it's not like that unique to be a millionaire.
no, no. What I mean by that is there's not that many from a proportional perspective who come from poverty and make it. Actually, most people don't because life is
Thank
based on a
goodness for capitalism that gives us that ability to actually have that right if we work hard enough to actually have the right to actually earn money because of the system we're in.
Yeah, no, no. So we have the right to earn money, but at the same time, let's say you're born in poverty, you might have to start, grinding at a young age. You might have to, unfortunately, give up a job because you're going to have to do certain things that a rich person isn't able to do. And my
Mhm.
kids are going to be given opportunities that a kid from a poor background isn't able to get,
Correct.
isn't able to have. And so, why should my kid like basically be given better? Like not have to pay tax and look out for the poor. So I do think there needs to be a situation where you look out for poor people for sure. But at the same time, I agree with you. There shouldn't be over taxation because once you do over taxation, like you said, someone like you would be like, I'm gonna leave the country. Someone like me be like, I'm gonna leave UK. So there is that balance that needs to happen. But I do think you should look out for the poor.
No, no, I understand. Do you think throughout history, because I remember someone told me this, basically the rich give enough scraps to the poor so they basically don't rise up and kill them?
100%.
That's pretty much what I've seen throughout society, from the French
More than that.
Revolution to Arab Spring. It's basically give them enough scraps so they're poor and they can't really do anything. But as long as you feed them enough and entertain them enough and give them enough sports to watch, enough UFC, and give them enough alcohol on the weekends. By the way, haram, all that stuff. You're docile the population.
Exactly. And alcohol does docile your mind, and that's the reason why it's not allowed. But in terms of what you just said, they do that, but more than that, you know what they do? So they do everything you said, I agree with. But also, you know what you do? You know the example you gave about making people fight. So what they do is they're rich. You know what? Your best way to keep a poor person to not rise up against you is to fight each other. So what they in reality do is they'll get poor white people, poor black people, poor Asian people to fight each other. You're the bad guy, you're taking my jobs, you're doing this, you're doing that. All of them are struggling, all of them are poor, all of them are dying. They can't even make ends meet and they're blaming each other while people who are rich, people who control society are chilling because what really happens is if those people were to unite and not have beef, then they'd start looking at the top guy and
Yep.
that's why they do it.
You know, I when Rome sacked Jerusalem and the Jews had to flee their home, they became the Vikings. That's why you look at the word Viking, it has VI in front of it. In Roman numerals, VI is 6. So basically, Vikings is 6 kings. If you know anything what that means, that's basically links back to the Jewish faith. I believe that right now they want to, to a point, get rid of Whitey. Whitey was 30% of the population of the world in the 1900s. Now they're 7 or 8%, and they still have the audacity to call us the majority. I'm not white. I consider myself Jewish, so I don't know. Maybe that's strange for people, but that's the way I look at things. And I believe that the Jews or the Zionists have decided that the only real opposition they have is Whitey, and I believe they're going to get them back for revenge for sacking Rome back in the day, and I believe that's why they're starting wars. Because I mean, what's going on now? You basically have brothers killing each other. You basically have white people killing each other, and what's going to happen? Those Chinese are going to swoop up and take all the women. Women got to have babies with somebody, and if no one's
And
around, that's how you change demographics without a fight, man. At least that's
and
what I see
I'll
happening.
and so just to add to your point, so it's not just Zionists actually. So when you look at the liberal left, I know this is controversial, but I do think that the Chinese have a big part in that as well. This kind of degeneracy in the West, I think they've done it from a covert perspective and an overt perspective in terms of social media, TikTok, and so on and so forth. And so they have also proliferated society in order to destroy it. And the reasoning is, as you said, because look, the real enemy in society is two sets of people, and I'm not one of them. So again, I'm not saying it like to try and think it's white people and it's black people for different reasons. Because black people they're harder to control, right? So how do you basically control them is to basically put them in gangs, put them in low income societies, put drugs in their society. Damn, you're gone now.
To put crack in the streets in L.A.,
Exactly,
arrest
exactly.
all the men, make sure the kids grow up without fathers. No
Fathers,
woman can teach a
100%.
boy how to become a man. Yeah, I get it.
Exactly.
I get it.
100%. So they do it
100%.
for that reason.
And
And then the
now
housing
with Whitey,
policies.
spreading
And
homosexuality,
and
spreading
with
shit
white
like
people,
that,
so with white people, you know why they're a problem is because of
empower women.
no, well, they do now. They do now. But again, that's because of proliferation. But in reality, white people are a problem for a variety of reasons. But I'm just going to boil it down to a few. Is when it comes to white people, they are basically, generally speaking, have the intellect and intelligence. I'm not saying all white people, in case people are like, oh, I'm trying to say white people are intelligent. And they have this control of society. There's a reason why America in current society was the world power. There's a reason why Britain was the world power before that, and it basically became second in command afterwards. And so what you need to do is to take them out, is to go after the white man, because once you, and how do you take the white man out? Well, these guys have been winning the wars since the last 100 years. They've been putting people under manners. I know you can give some stupid examples like, oh, some people push back here, push back. Let's be clear, like these guys have been in charge. They've had people under manners for almost a
No,
century, right?
I would say the Zionists have been, puppeteering and telling the white man what to do.
I mean,
That's my opinion. I believe I don't think white people have any power in America at all. I think the APAC and the Jewish lobby has way more influence than any white man in America. That's my personal opinion. Now, if you want to say that white people have been running the show, yeah, they've probably been the CEO. They've been the CEO of America. They've been the CEO of the UK, but they're not the shareholder. The shareholder is always the Rothschilds. The shareholder. So this is what I believe. I believe that the Rothschilds know everything goes in cycles. I believe the Rothschilds understand that they need someone to blame. So I believe every single 200, 300 years, they have a new race in charge. And the Zionists are like the overlord race. And every 200, 300 years, they make sure that the race that's basically the face of everything changes. So before that, it was the Chinese. Remember, you mentioned this in the very beginning. You said a society cannot close off itself. What did Chinese do? They were the most advanced people in the world in the 1500s. They built this huge wall because they decided everyone else was inferior. And at that time, they were right. Everyone was inferior to them. But within 300 years, what happened? Those colonists came back with gunboats. All of a sudden, they understood that they're not the top of the food chain anymore. So I believe that happens all the time. I believe at some point in world history, the black man's going to be in charge. I believe at some point it's going to be back to the Asians. And then maybe at some point again, it'll go back to the white man. But at the very, very top, it's always the Zionists.
so just to add something to your point, I agree with your point in terms of society changing every 200 years. And what actually happens is, and Tonsby wrote about this, but basically the interproletarians, so the people who are considered like the lower ends of society, so in this situation it'd be the Muslims, ordinarily what happens is they actually end up taking over and they end up becoming the dominant society, because those who are on the top forget what made them the top guy in the first place. And when they forget, or as you said,
Generational.
maybe or they get influenced, they
Mhm.
basically end up imploding. So you're seeing that now in Western society, where they forgot what made them the top dons, and now they're going into degeneracy, feminism. They're going to destroy their society, and then the interproletarian basically comes and
It
takes
all
over, which
goes
is
back to
economic
women's rights, though. It all goes back to the 19th Amendment in America when they gave women
feminism.
the right to vote. They're the ones who vote for these socialist policies. They're the ones who vote for this homosexuality and this degeneracy. That's why you have to strip women of their right to vote. Until that happens, nothing's going to change. Absolutely nothing. I tell people all the time the 19th Amendment was worse than 19. I'm going to let you in another little thing. A lot of people never think about this. In the 1800s, when slavery ended, the racist white people at that time decided they were going to give the black man the right to vote. I want you to think about this. They gave people who they considered on paper 3/5 of a person the right to vote before they gave their own women the right to vote. The black man was voting in America in the 1860s. The white woman was not voting in America until the 1920s. They thought more of people they considered slaves than their own women. I want people to think about that.
And just to, again, agree with you, but basically the issue is whenever you have a society that is built, because look, leadership has certain skill sets. We've talked about leadership skill sets and so on and so forth. Leadership has a specific skill set. And what's happened to society now is either women are in leadership or they're impacting the leadership structure. And what happens is whenever you have feminine traits, and remember, feminine traits are good for certain aspects, and
Yes,
male traits are good for other aspects.
one hundred
It's not that
percent.
we're saying women are worthless, but there's different skill sets.
I don't think I've never seen a man be the best version of himself without a loyal woman by his side. I'm telling you that
Yeah,
right now. So
yeah,
women have a place, and if it wasn't for women, who the hell would raise the kids? I mean, the men don't really start raising the kids till they're about 12, 13 years old. Before that, they're running around with their mother. So women have a freaking role, and that's why it's so important for you as a man, for people out there listening as a man. If you want your woman, if you want your family to be submissive, make sure she doesn't work. Be a man out there, earn enough money so she can be at the house raising your kids the way you want them to be raised, instead of her going to work, picking up masculine traits because she has stress, coming home, you guys fighting. And by the way, the state gets a hold of your kids at a much younger age and they start indoctrinating them. That's what happens.
And so coming back to the issue, when it comes to women, generally speaking, women are more emotional. Their decisions are not as logical as men. Men's decision making, unless they're feminine, ends up being a lot more logical. They're a lot more calm. They have certain traits that is needed in a leadership situation. So if you look at a lot of these movements that are happening, they're all based on emotion. Because when you ask them and you break it down and you're like, why do you believe in this? They're never able to explain it. And it's not just liberals. Even conservatives have fell for the psyop. So let's be clear. It's not a liberal or conservative thing. Even these conservatives, like they'll go there and they'll fight against transgender, and they'll specifically fight against biological men who are transgender, and they'll make an alliance with women, feminists. That is how dumb they are, because feminists are the ones who are destroying society. Transgender biological men are very small. You know, most transgender are women. Did you know that?
I mean, it doesn't surprise me. I mean,
and yet no one knows this. No one knows that women are more transgender. When it comes to children under 12, there's 300% more girls who are becoming transgender compared to boys. For children over 12, it's 2 times more. It's all your girls who are becoming transgender. But if you look at social media by the conservatives, it's always biological men they attack, because they're doing it with feminists. And the reason is because feminists hate men. It's all an attack on men. And these men have got mental issues for sure. That's the reason they happen. Or for the kids, it's not even mental issues. They're being controlled by society. They're being brainwashed. And yet they're making alliances with the very people who have caused this. And they're not even realizing that those women who are transgender, who are lesbians, have literally, and feminists, they've literally taken themselves out of the entire pool of society. And what happens? You don't have a society, you don't have a family, and you have a population collapse.
well, we see what's happening in Japan. We see what's happening in other countries where they decided to instill Western values when they decided that, okay, the women aren't going to have that many kids, but we're going to keep the borders closed. We're not going to have any more immigration. Are you people out of your fucking mind? You can't have an aging population and not have immigration. That's complete nonsense. So, like for instance, in America, let's talk about why America needs immigrants. And it all goes back to liberals. First, the women, they basically don't have enough kids anymore. They're having sex with God knows who else, but they're having abortion. So we don't know. But when it comes down to it, sometimes I get really upset thinking about this and I lose my train of thought. But the fact of the matter is, unless feminism is curved, unless women's right to vote is curved, we're never going to solve this problem. Absolutely never. And I'm going to tell you something. When I talk to women, they're ready to give up their right to vote. They are ready to give up their right to vote if they're taken care of. I believe it would be much more important for women to have maybe some kind of basic income, for women to have some kind of something from the government, some kind of benefit that would be socialistic. But the trade off is they can't vote anymore. I believe that's the way to
So,
fix society.
and just to give another perspective, not same perspective, but just another point, is in reality, if you speak to most women, not the ones who've been brainwashed, if you give them an opportunity to say, you don't need to work, but you're going to be taken care of, they would take that
Clockwork.
opportunity all day long. So again, it comes back to men who are not able to basically provide for their women. They're losers. They're not able to financially provide. They're not doing their duty. And then they're masculinating their women. The women become men. They don't respect them. And then you have a break all of the household as well.
We've been bashing women enough. Let's talk about these beta males. If a man is not providing for his family, is he actually a man, or is he just a little punk ass bitch? I think I
Is not a
lost.
man. And again, it comes back to religion because, I mean, it doesn't come back to religion, is this? Are you back?
I got you.
Yeah. So even in the Quran, it says, look, men are the providers and sustainers of women. And just, the Quran for me is an ethical, moral framework, but it's something that you naturally know anyway, because it doesn't contradict. So what you know, because you're a smart person without reading the Quran,
I read a little
the
bit of it.
Quran,
I read
yeah,
certain
yeah,
verses.
no, but let's say you didn't.
Mhm.
Let's say someone never read the Quran, but they
Okay,
were a smart, intellectual individual who wasn't impacted by nurture. He would come to the same views as the Quran
I
because
agree.
Quran is a rational book, and hence why you're basically a Muslim in
I'm not a
reality in
Muslim.
all your views. Yeah,
I'm not a Muslim.
I mean in all your views.
I,
I mean in all your views
if
you are.
if I support Islam, I mean, listen, I personally believe if this was 300 years ago, Muslims would probably have me burned at the stake along with Christians. Because I would be accused of heresy with numerology and astrology. Again, I understand what you're saying that this is an accepted practice, but let's be honest. I mean, if this was 300 years ago, me and you will both be fucking killed. We're talking heresy here, when it comes to numerology and astrology. So, people have to
True.
be very, very careful. I like the pendulum right here. Whenever it swings a little bit too much in either direction, that becomes a problem.
100%.
That becomes a big
Totally
problem.
agree.
I
Totally agree.
I want family values. I personally believe if I had my way, I see no issues with Sharia law. I see no issues with it except for maybe the jizza. Other than that, I see really no issues. When men are weak to the flesh, I'm not, maybe you're not, but most men are weak to the flesh. I've seen some of the most successful, some of the biggest people in the world from a fighting standpoint, some people who are massive 260-pound bodybuilders, some people who are the most successful people in the world who are men who see a beautiful woman and all of a sudden they get dumb. They see a
Yeah.
beautiful woman and all of a sudden all those morals and all those convictions they have go right the fuck out the window. Men are weak to the flesh. So when I see the Quran advocating for hijabs and things of that nature, I understand personally that's not to suppress women. I understand that as that's a way to keep men in check. So, they don't see some beautiful woman and all of a sudden they start, maybe having an affair with her. Instead, that woman's going to be covered up. They're going to go home and they're going to fuck their fucking wife instead. That's the way I look at it. Other people have a different perspective.
So also just to add to what you said, in terms of like the hijab, which is basically modesty, that is important not just for men but for women as well. Because look what happens in a society. In a society where women basically lose their moral compass, they start dressing indecently. They start basically, as you said, whoring themselves out. Then what happens? Then they start basically having sex with loads of men. Then because what happens is everything's an acceleration. You first take off your clothes, then you start sleeping with loads of men, then you start sleeping with loads of men, and then you lose who you are as a woman. And that's why controls are important. Some people don't need it. You mentioned it, and I'm
Yeah,
the same.
and
I
I want
don't
to I
need.
want to make this clear. There's some women who can put their photos on Instagram, who can look all sexy, kind of classy, and they're not hoes because they have the same self-control as me and you do as men. We're not grouping all
Exactly.
women, but the fact of the matter
100%.
is, most of these women who are fucking dressing proactively, doing all that stuff, most of these IG models, they're fucking hoes. They're fucking
But
hoes. 100%. So while I'm not talking to all of you, a high percentage.
yeah, and that's the point. So you can give your example, you can give my example, you can give example of these women, but in reality, you know, when it comes to any kind of code of law, so even the Quran, whatever it may be, any kind of code of law is for the majority. Because the
Yes.
majority are the ones who need to be under manners. Because me and you can follow the rules even without the Quran, because
Yes.
we know naturally that's the right thing to
I'm
do.
I'm so
But
happy to hear a Muslim actually say that I can follow the rules, God's law, without actually being a Muslim. Because that's what I've been saying for years. I agree with a lot of Muslims. There's certain disagreements I have. We talked about that already. But I gotta tell people, it's either this or LGBT. It's either this or homosexuals. It's either this or pedophiles. Decide. For me, it's an easy choice. Now,
and for me,
Mhm.
and for me, just to say what you just said now, you just don't want to use the word Muslim. But if you look at your entire belief system, if you look at your ideology, if you look at your psychology, it's basically the same as a Muslim. So
Most
I
people
get you
would
don't want to
disagree
use.
with you because I'm a numerologist astrologer.
No, but again, like I said, those are basically a
Yes.
certain sections. I admit that they've got power. So, for example, Ibn al-Arabi, you heard of Ibn Arabi, even the West people know about him. So he is a famous like philosopher, theologian.
Hmm.
He even said that this world is similar to your point. He said this, but just different number. So he said this world is the 36th world. So it's the 36th Adam. So Adam of this, you know, Adam is like the first creature.
Hmm.
So this Adam is the 36th Adam. So it goes back to your point, what you're saying. So when you're talking about Muslims, you're talking about a certain section of, but I admit that they're more vocal now. They're more powerful. They have a lot of social media following. So people who have alternative views are done. Now coming back to the point.
You're doing
So
pretty well on social media yourself, pal.
yeah, and I just came up by luck because really people who are my
Luck.
belief system
Okay,
don't really do well.
33. Okay, luck. You can save that garbage for someone else, man. You were meant to.
I appreciate that. But coming back to the point. So what you're talking about, this entire Quran, the Quran is important. But remember, we had certain sections of society where hundreds of years, thousands of years, where there wasn't a book. So does that mean God didn't guide people? No, because God created you to be able to come to the truth based on
Mhm.
your own intellect and your own intelligence.
Okay. This is a question I ask pretty much all the preachers. How does a illiterate man, Muhammad, write a book? I mean, it kind of seems like a fairy tale to me that a man who's illiterate, wrote a book the same way that Christianity, Mary had a kid without someone piping her down. You know, this just doesn't make sense to me. You seem like a very, rational man. Can you please explain to me how you can believe, or if you believe, that Muhammad, an illiterate man, wrote the Quran?
Okay, so again, I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this, but I don't hold the position that's held by a lot of Muslims that he was illiterate. Now, the argument they make of why he's illiterate is because they say he was illiterate, so it was impossible for him to get external information from other
Yeah,
people to get the
that's why
Quran.
I
So they
keep
have to
hearing all
try.
the time.
Yeah, because they have to try and prove it. Look, the Quran in itself is a miracle. You don't need an illiterate person to read it. And so, actually, they base it on the word which is ikra, and they say that means read. So it means that they thought he didn't know how to read, and God said read, and He made him read. I think that word, based on classical Arabic poetry, actually means gather. So God's actually saying, gather your people, gather your people. Now we're going to start a movement, essentially. Obviously, there's more complexities to that. So I don't believe he's illiterate,
Hmm.
and I believe that he basically, the Quran was revealed to him from God, and then he basically ensured that the veracity and accuracy of it because he wasn't illiterate.
I know gambling's haram, but want to make some bets who gets more hate after this interview, me or you.
It's going to be me, but I'm not bothered.
You're
33s
used to
are
it,
more than
aren't you?
other. Yeah.
Have you ever got death threats?
All the time.
Okay, I got a couple a week. I'm just curious.
I got
I'll tell you what.
on your post. On your post.
Yeah. Most people's threats are as empty as a poor person's wallet.
Yeah, true. So on your post where you wrote about that imam being a liar, and I think I posted on there, one of them anyway, and I
Yeah.
wrote you destroyed him.
Yes.
I got a death threat over that. They were like, "Oh my god, you betrayed the Muslims. I'm gonna
Yeah, I
find
read
you. I'm
that.
gonna
I
kill
read
you."
that.
And I
I
was like,
read that.
"Yeah."
I'm like, wow, man. I mean, god damn,
And
people
it was
aren't
a
allowed to
private
have a different
DM.
opinions.
Yeah, yeah. But I have to be honest. Like they want me to lie. You destroyed him. Like I have to tell the truth.
I mean, this has not been a debate. This has not been a
It
debate at
hasn't.
all. This has been a very, very pleasant conversation. Quite frankly, I wish you were a little bit more hostile. But
But the problem is,
we
other than
agree on
a
too
very
much.
minute.
We agree
Exactly,
on
we
too
agree on too
much,
much.
brother. 233s agree on too much. We married both five
Exactly.
life paths. Our first child is both 11s. I mean, if,
Yeah.
if you don't think this is a matrix, you're out your mind, brother. I'm gonna
Exactly. Well,
start rapping. I'm gonna start.
my second child's 22. So is yours 22?
No, he was born on the 28th. Made sure he was.
Ah, okay.
I
Yeah,
made
I did know.
sure that no matter what, my kids were set financially based off their birthdays. Anyways,
Nice.
listen, my friend, this was a pleasant conversation. I want to start wrapping things up.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to the Tates before I do.
Sure.
When it comes down to the Tates, are you in any way getting benefited financially for supporting them?
So I'll be totally honest with you. So I was getting zero remunerations from the Tates
Mm-hmm.
for any kind of support that I gave them.
Mm-hmm.
But recently I've started helping them with the charity work.
Okay.
So the charity.
So
If
wait
you
a
see
second,
my
wait a second, wait a
charity
second.
post,
How are you helping them with the charity work? Are you picking the
so
foundations?
yeah.
So wait a second. The Tate's foundations that they're supporting, at least the Muslim causes, they're going through you?
Yeah. So what I mean by that is not that they're going through me. Let's be clear. So what happens is I'm basically organizing it. So what'll happen is I'll speak to whichever country that they're donating to. I'll speak to the type of project that it's going to be, and then we basically make sure it happens.
Don't you have an interest in supporting them then?
So you would maybe make that argument over the last few months because that's when it's been happening. But
Okay.
before that,
But
I wasn't.
before that, it
Yeah.
wasn't. Okay.
No. So
I,
specifically the
I
charity
really
stuff.
don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
Listen, if you're helping poor people, that's fine. But how did this happen? How did you start working with them? Did they reach out to you, or did you reach out to them, or was it someone in the
Um.
middle?
No. So I was helping the Tates, but not financially. So if you look at the entire case in Miami,
Mm-hmm.
that entire litigation, they've sued the women, haven't they, for I think it's $5 million in Miami. And I did all the investigative journalism on that. So I went to Miami, I uncovered everything. I uncovered her entire past, all them sources are mine. I would say nearly 90% of that case is either I'm directly found the information or I was the cause of that information. Probably 90 to 100%.
When were you in
And when I
Miami
found it,
doing this?
this was in February.
Does Fresh and Fit and Sneeko know about this?
I believe they know, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think they would be interested to talk to you about that stuff too. Listen, anyone who's trying to make the world a better place and help people, I don't care if they're my enemies or not. That's definitely a good thing to do. Um, is there a reason you were chosen for this? They know plenty of Muslims. Why go through you?
I think it's because obviously there's a number of reasons. They obviously know I'm quite smart.
We can
I
see
did
that
give
by
them such
we can see that
yeah.
here.
And I don't know if I'm allowed to say a lot of these things publicly, but they like there's a lot of reasons why they know I know what I'm doing, right?
Okay.
And so for that reason, it come to a point where they were like, look, this is a role. What can you do this? We want to do charity work. I was like, awesome idea. Like you should do it. You should
Uh,
do all these charities. And so then we start basically doing it where we were giving charity to different
I
countries
see.
and different projects.
Are you at all worried that Tristan Tate has said numerology's bullshit, Andrew Tate, and now after this interview, do you think you're going to have a problem continuing? Because they have attacked me for numerology for at least 4 or 5 years now. You're out here professing numerology and you're actually working for them. They're going to see this. Do you think there's going to be any, hit back because of it?
Um, No, I don't think so because at the end of the day, everyone has different positions, ideas, and beliefs. I mean, I think And I don't think they'll be that shallow to think that, look, just because this guy believes in numerology or this guy believes in, this guy had an interview with GG33, that's a problem.
Okay. Well, I've interviewed many war room members, so it should not be an issue. But I didn't know you're working
Yeah,
this personally close with them.
yeah,
My,
yeah. So I mean, I do communicate with Andrew quite a bit,
okay,
and
no issues, no issues. Tell Andrew I'll whoop his ass in chess. I'm a little bit too old to fight him, but I'll whoop his ass in chess anytime. Moving on. When you look at social media, who are the social media stars of this year? You've seen Tate, it's 2022. Who are the up and coming social media stars you've seen in 2023?
so I would say probably I know I've heard you saying that you think it's Zerka. Um,
He
he
took he
is
took he took 10% of Tate's audience. No, I've been hitting this guy for a year. I probably took maybe, I don't know, 1%, 0.11% or something like that. This dude literally took 10% of their audience. There's literally people who say they used to support Tate that support Zerka. Obviously he's the cocaine crusader and stuff like that, but he's an extremely funny man. And based off numerology, this is 2023, the last two digits, 2 and 3. He's born on the 23rd. A lot of people born on the 23rd, even people in my group born on the 23rd, like Sticks, are doing an excellent job this year. So the numerology is with him. So that's my opinion. But what's yours?
So I have no idea, I'll be honest with you. I don't in terms of social media, other than what I see on Twitter, and I do agree with you, some of Zerka's stuff is quite funny. Obviously, I disagree with him. I was actually gonna write a post against one of the points he made against Islam, just to basically give my
He used to be a Muslim, man. I'm sure he'd enjoy talking to you.
Yeah, yeah, and the point I was going to make was about this burning bush point that you made. So I was just going to like basically cover that. But in reality, like, yeah, he's funny. Like some of the videos I see are funny. I think he knows the right moves to make to be able to do well. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's him. But most of these other guys are rubbish. So like becoming famous isn't about skills. Like Destiny, all these guys, they're really rubbish.
Oh,
Like
Destiny's a fucking faggot. Okay,
yeah, I destroyed him in a
listen.
debate.
I'm gonna make this abundantly clear. Nothing's lower than a pedophile. But if you're as a man out there and you have nothing to actually show, and you color your hair blue to stand out, you don't stand out because you're a great athlete. You don't stand out because you're intellectual. You stand out because of something you did. You're a fucking loser. And then your woman is out there basically fucking whoever she wants, and you're okay with this? And Adam 22, I don't have much kind things to say with many people who have face tattoos, because I've besides maybe Mike Tyson, who did it for Islam, most people who have face tattoos, in my opinion, are homosexuals. Normal people
No,
don't do stuff like
mental health
that.
issues as well.
Normal people just
So
don't do stuff like that. Why would you
yeah,
put
yeah.
something on your, like? Listen, I got a 33 here. That's the only tattoo I'm gonna have because that's how much I believe. But for me to put a tattoo on my face like Adam 22, I got a question for Adam 22. I'm sure you can be listening, or I'm sure you're gonna see this clip. We obviously see you're gonna pimp out your wife. I'm curious, when your daughter gets older, are you gonna pimp her out too? Just curious. I mean, how far are you gonna take this? I mean, you had someone ran into your fucking wife for clout. I mean, who knows? Maybe in 15, 16 years, you're going to have someone to run into your daughter for clout. You sick motherfucker.
And just to add to your point, people who do tattoos to such an extensive amount, especially on the face, more specifically the space because it's about your appearance.
Yes.
They do have certain levels of mental health issues. Like, why would you do that? Because you've got certain kind of psychological deficiencies, and then you want to profess them. But I've got a question for you, if that's all right.
Yes, sir.
By the way, my younger brother is like one of your fans, right? So he sent me a question, so I am going to ask you from him. So he said, how does it work with the enemy year and the same year is your life path year? So that's
I wouldn't worry too much about your life path year, but in your enemy year, you always have to, watch your ass. One thing I can, give examples of. Last year, Tate Tiger did well in the Tiger year. Mr. Beast the Tiger did well in the Tiger year. Tom Cruise the Tiger. Even Sneeko a Tiger did well in the Tiger year. But the people who were born in their enemy year, the monkey, were getting their asses handed to them. People know what FTX is. It's a cryptocurrency that just basically went boom. It was the exchange. Who was running that, exchange? It was Mr. Bankfield, and he was born 1992, the year of the monkey. So whatever you are in your enemy year, lay low, don't take any risks, don't take any chances, or you're going to get your ass handed to you. Once every 12 years, no matter who you are, you get hit. Since we're talking to people who are listening who are Muslims right now, let's give you an example. Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was born in the year of the ox, 1937. He came to power in 1979. 1979 was his enemy year. What happened when he took over Iraq? He destroyed it. Iraq used to be the crown jewel of the Middle East, like Dubai is. He actually destroyed it because he came to power in his enemy year. After 1979, and by the way, before I go on with the story, Saddam Hussein might be one of the most wicked men who ever lived. This motherfucker went into an auditorium in 1979 and he called all the members of the Ba'ath Party. And he didn't give a speech. He started calling out names. And as soon as the name was called, the military went in there, they grabbed the guy, and 2 minutes later, you boom, because he got a fucking bullet right here. Could you imagine being in that auditorium for 4 hours for fear of your life that your name's going to be called and you're gone? That's the type of fear Saddam put in people. But going back to what I was saying, 1991, 12 years after 1979, next Gulf War, GOAT year. And then he gets taken out in 2003, again, a GOAT year. By the way, who was his enemy? Who was Saddam's main enemy besides the USA? It was Iran. Iran, the mullahs came to power 1979, the year of the GOAT. So again, the GOAT and the ox going to war. And by the way, who has replaced Saddam as Iran's number one enemy? MBS, the Crown Prince. And the Crown Prince is born 1985, the year of the ox. So even though Saddam the ox is gone, now we have a new ox who fights against Iran the goat. This it's all there. It's all there. If you guys want to look at history, Iran, 1979, the first major uprising they felt was in 2009, the year of the ox. It's always enemy signs, guys. This is something you don't even have to believe me. Just go out there and do the work, and you'll see this stuff works yourself. You there?
Yeah, I'm listening. Sorry. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing to add to that because that was a question to you.
All right, my man. Before we go, is there anything you want to plug? Anything you want to say? How do people find you? If people want to reach out to you for podcasts, how do they do that?
Yeah, just my Twitter. It's Sheikh Suleiman, ShaykHSuleiman, and that's my Twitter handle.
My friend, I am in Miami. If you ever come here back again, I would like to do an in-studio interview with you. And, I think I kind of like the in-studio stuff a little bit more than the computer. I appreciate technology. It's a wonderful thing, but I kind of miss the, human-to-human interaction, if you know what I mean.
No, I agree with you. It's always better. And then it's off the cuff as well. You can see each other's live reactions.
100%. Anyways, my friend, listen, it was a pleasure. I think we went through a lot. I think we covered a lot of subjects. I think we gave a lot of people stuff to talk about. I think you have defended the Tates in a very, very loyal way. And I hope they appreciate that because most people, one of the things I will say, and I probably shouldn't say this, but I believe in loyalty. And I've seen a lot of people, even though he's my enemy, I've seen a lot of people disloyal to him. Like when he was hot, they were on him like white on rice. And as soon as he started having some problems, people distanced themselves to me. And those same people reached out to me and they wanted to form alliances. I'm going to make this abundantly clear. If you betrayed one master, you will betray another.
100%, I agree. And just to add to your, because you've just given me a carrot there. So in terms of the loyalty thing, obviously that is another aspect of Islamic physiognomy, and that is what they do is this. So this is a bit controversial, so some people might cry. So what they do is they believe that each person is represented based on their physical appearance, based on a specific animal, right? So, for example, and it's based on the features. It doesn't mean you're that animal. Let's say someone's like
I'm a snake. If you look at snakes, they have the same little bump that comes up. So most people who are born in snake years usually have that bump right there that comes out, just like a fucking
Yeah.
cobra. You'll see it.
Yeah, yeah. But your one is slightly different in terms of this one because it takes into consideration your entire face. So in terms of what your animal is like extremely loyal.
Makes sense, man. Makes sense. Anyways, my friend, it was a pleasure talking to you. This was a very, very pleasant conversation. I think a lot of people learned a lot from your perspective, from mine. And again, when people say numerology is haram, talk to this man. He's not the only one who believes in stuff like this. Numerology cannot be haram. And I'm going to tell you this, me as a non-Muslim, I'm going to shove this down all you Muslims, all you Christians, all you Jews. I'm going to shove this down your throat because in my world, that's God's will.
Yeah, I've got no disagreement with that.
It was a pleasure,
Because
my
like I said,
friend. Any
it was a
last
pleasure, yeah.
words?
Like I said, yeah, just the last word on what you just said. Like, look, let's be clear. Numerology isn't alien to Islam. It's compatible. And like I said, when you look at the entire fragment of the universe, when you look at the Quran, it has got numerology, it has got numbers within it. What people call the numerical miracle of the Quran, which, like a lot of people didn't talk about it for a while, and now they start talking about it again. What is that? That's numerology. Why is them numbers in there? Why is it even before you knew the rotation of the sun, the number of the number of days in a year were in there, 365? Why would God put in there word sun 365 times throughout the whole Quran? Numerology, numbers, because the entire universe is based on numbers.
Remember, you're listening to a man. You're listening to a man who didn't fall for the psyop like most of the Muslim imams did. Nothing but respect for you, brother. And I hope to do this again in person next time.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot, bro.
This has been
Bye.
a GG33 production. Check it out.